The story begins with our protagonist running for his life, but he tripped on something, and immediately he started falling down the cliff. He hit the ground hard, realizing his legs were completely exhausted. Yahello looked up and saw a bunch of hooded figures surrounding him. He realized that they were behind everything. One of the hooded figures chuckled, saying that young Master Cheon had taken so long that he was starting to get bored. Yahello thought about what he could do, since he was too tired to run anymore. He asked them why they were doing this, since he had no intention of joining the academy, and had no chance of winning anyway. The hooded figure replied that it didn't matter if he had given up on the academy, or if his fighting skills were terrible, young Master Cheon should already know that. The figure stated that as long as Yahello was a potential heir, there was no other way, and they would make his death painless because he had the blood of His Holiness running through him. He couldn't believe they would slander his mother like that. Yahello realized they had no intention of killing him painlessly, so he wouldn't die without a fight. He wondered if Guard Zhang had taught them how to fight. The hooded figure observed that Yahello had no idea what he was doing, but it looked like the battle marks of His Holiness ran strong in him. The hooded figure noted how Yahello refused to give up despite not knowing the first thing about fighting, and that it would make this hunt all the more rewarding. The hooded figure ordered them to kill Yahello. Yahello was barely dodging the attacks. At the same time, one of the hooded figures threw something. Yahello screamed as a sword hit him. Meanwhile, one of the hooded figures was moving in. One of the hooded figures grabbed Yahello by the neck, clenching his fist. The hooded figure chuckled, asking Yahello if he was finished. Another hooded figure yelled for the others to watch out, but it was too late. He stabbed Yahello. The other hooded figures watched in shock as the protagonist got one of them. The hooded figure chuckled, saying that Yahello deserved it. He wondered how this untrained kid could kill a member of the stealth squad. Was it just luck? The hooded figure thought it was impressive that Yahello was so smart even when facing death. He wondered what he could do with training. Then, he swung his sword and yelled at Yahello. The hooded figure attacked. As a result, Yahello was choking. The hooded figure looked down, saying that the games were over. Yahello was lying on the ground, looking defeated. He coughed as he was choking. As a result, the view above him blurred. The hooded figure asked Yahello how it felt to have a hole in his stomach. Yahello thought he was out of tricks, but at least he took one of them down with him. He wanted to make the enemies suffer longer, as he died. The hooded figure didn't like this, but he figured it couldn't be helped. They lost a man. He sighed. Suddenly, there was a flash. The hooded figure's eyes widened. One of them suddenly exploded. Turns out, Yahello was perfectly fine, and the assassins around him were getting wrecked. Yahello was barely conscious, but the hooded figure was asking what that white light was just now. The hooded figure felt something and shifted his foot. Then he yelled at the others to turn around and look behind them. They all turned to see a strange blue figure standing in the forest. The new guy with modern-looking clothes was a contrast to this ancient era. One of the hooded figures wondered what that strange outfit was. The hooded figure yelled, demanding to know who was there, but the guy smirked. And immediately, there was a bright flash. The assassins went flying into the air. The assassin was completely shocked by what he just saw. He couldn't believe that the guy had disappeared right in front of them. He wondered if it was some kind of advanced martial art, or if he had turned invisible. Another assassin yelled to the captain, asking what the light was. The captain was just as confused. He wondered if it was the power of some master helping Yahello, but he couldn't understand why a master would help him. The captain figured that Yahello had lost too much blood to live. They had completed their mission. The assassins yelled to retreat and started running away. The figure's hand glowed with blue light. The last assassin also met his end. Yahello was grinning, saying that was excellent. The figure talked to him, saying that his noble ancestor was in a good mood despite bleeding to death. Our protagonist wondered what the guy meant by calling him his noble ancestor. As his vision blurred, Yahello thought to himself that his body was getting cold, and he wondered if this was how he was going to die. Suddenly, a new guy showed up, saying he was already found. He added that he wanted to come earlier to teach him how to use it, but there was no time. Guy said he had to hurry before Yahello died, and he stabbed him with a syringe. He admitted that it hurt just watching the needle go in, but he was all done. He said, "All right, forefather." The guy said he hoped Yahello would succeed and do some good for his descendants. He told him that the nanomachines were cutting edge, so he wouldn't have any trouble using them. Then, the man disappeared in a flash of light. Yahello, barely conscious, wondered what the strange boy was saying. Suddenly, Yahello heard something strange in his head about Sky Corp and a Gen 7 nanomachine now being operational. Long ago, the warriors of China learned martial arts to defend themselves. As time went on, these martial arts changed from just self-defense into a deadly art. They wrote down the fighting forms and breathing techniques to increase their power, and these became sacred manuals. Factions started to form as warriors gathered around masters, hoping to become their students. Among these were the righteous faction, who followed the path of good, and the evil faction, who followed the path of wickedness. The leaders of these factions stood on high, surrounded by their followers. These mighty warriors gathered to build their power. Yahello woke up in bed, looking around with a shocked expression. He wondered if he was actually alive. He remembered getting stabbed in the stomach. Then he wondered what had happened to him, and why he was so wet. As he tried to sit up, he noticed something was wrong. He started coughing, and then he noticed something sticky. He looked at his hand and wondered what the black stuff was. He smelled something awful. He jumped out of bed, asking who was there. He didn't see anyone around and wondered what was going on. Then, he heard a voice telling him to calm down. Yahello felt like the sound was vibrating in his head. He wondered if it was actually coming directly from inside him. Then, he heard a voice that said, "That's right, user." He was shocked and asked what? He screamed, asking who was talking to him. The voice responded that it was Sky Corp's Gen 7 nanomachine. Yahello didn't understand a word and shouted, asking who they were and why they were doing this to him. The voice repeated that it was a Gen 7 nanomachine. Yahello repeated the word machine. Then, the voice confirmed that it was a nanomachine. Yahello trembled, asking if it was true, if it was really the revered machine. Meanwhile, two men were talking. One said, "This way, Physician Beck," and the other responded, "Very well." Then, one of them asked if it was an assassination attempt, and the other confirmed. The man thought that they had always looked down on the young master and tried to kill him before, but he never thought they would try to separate him from the young master. Because if they could trick someone like Guard Jang, it had to be the stealth squad. It was a miracle that the young master survived. Meanwhile, the two men continued to walk deeper into the building. The man paused, thinking to himself, well, he started gasping for air. Turning around, he saw someone standing over a dead body. There was only one whole body left intact. He was lying there, stabbed by the dagger that was given to the young master. Then he heard the sound of breathing. Not too far from the bodies, Yahello was lying in a signs of battle. He had lost a lot of battle marks, but, at the same time, two men were talking. The first man noticed that the young master had no wounds on his body. The second man agreed. The first man wondered who could have helped him. He didn't think the patriarch would involve himself in such spats. The second man agreed, saying it was interesting. So they decided to hurry to the young master's chambers. Yahello looked around, completely confused. He was wondering what a user was. Yahello was sitting on the floor when he heard a voice asking if he wanted to proceed. Suddenly, blue light started to surround him. He started choking and then threw up everything he had in his stomach. He coughed, and the voice said it was normal after the first transfer of information and that it wouldn't happen again. He was still very confused, though. He looked at his hand and asked if it was a nanomachine. The voice confirmed it, saying there were over 6 billion nanomachines in his body. Yahello sighed, realizing it wasn't a human or the machine. He then wondered if it could leave his body if he wanted it to. But the transferred information stated that it was programmed to only exit his body if he died. The young master remained sitting on the floor, thinking about everything he had just learned. He wondered why this was happening to him. Who put the nanomachine inside him? At that moment, Huban knocked on the door, announcing that Physician Beck was there to see him. Yahello was shocked. He told the nanomachine to stay quiet because he didn't want anyone to think he was crazy for talking to a machine in his head. He told it they could continue to communicate through thoughts only, and then he muted it temporarily. Huban thought the young master was still asleep, so he examined him quietly. But then, he realized that Yahello was awake. He asked how he was feeling, but then he suddenly gagged. Huban suddenly smelled something weird and asked the young master what it was, then realized that he forgot. At the same time, Physician Beck was thinking about something. The physician remembered that they had met before, when he took care of his mother when she was sick. He asked for the young master's hand to check his pulse. As Physician Beck checked Yahello's pulse, he flinched. The physician said something was strange, which made Huban ask if something was wrong with the young master. But the physician told him that it was quite the opposite and that this was very lucky. Physician Beck explained that the toxins had left his body, and his chi was flowing well. He asked if Yahello had taken some kind of special herb. Huban looked confused, and asked what the physician meant, as Yahello looked up from the bed. Physician Beck told him that his body was now in perfect condition to learn martial arts. Yahello was shocked. Yahello looked at the black sticky substance on his body and wondered if that was the toxins that came out of him. He wondered if the nanomachine did this. The nanomachine confirmed it. Suddenly, Yahello was standing in the middle of a blue light as the nanomachine scanned him. Yahello smirked. The demonic cult really respects martial and demonic arts. And among the different groups inside, there are 6 main sects: the Shadow, Sword, Stealth, Poison, Saber, and Musician sects. These sects made a deal to give their maidens to the leader of the demonic cult so he could have heirs. These heirs can become minor priests, and are raised by their mothers' families. When they get older, they go to the Academy of the Demonic Arts. The Academy of the Demonic Arts only opens once every 10 years. The instructors are the best masters in the cult, and their goal is to make the students fight each other to improve their martial arts skills. But there's a time when the competition gets super intense. It's when the candidates for minor priesthood enter the academy. Members of the cult call this the grand tournament for the minor priesthood. The physician thought to himself that someone must have helped Yeo-woon, since he was perfectly healthy now. He told Yeo-woon that he would prescribe some herbal medicine to help him recover. Yeo-woon offered to walk physician Beck out, but the physician said it wasn't necessary and told him to stay and watch over the young master. The physician wondered how Yeo-woon could have changed so much. He remembered how small he used to be and how he couldn't learn any martial arts. He thought that even though Yeo-woon was the son of a servant girl, he still had the battle marks of his holiness. The physician wondered if the patriarch had changed his mind about the young master. The physician decided that if his holiness had helped the young master in secret, he didn't need to acknowledge it. He figured the academy was going to be interesting this year. Yeo-woon was relieved that the physician didn't notice anything strange. He realized he was alive because Guard Jang found him. The nanomachine might have healed him, but if Guard Jang hadn't found him, he would have been dead. He wanted to thank Jang for saving him, but then he realized how bad he smelled. He figured he should probably take a bath first, since he reeked. Yeo-woon was sitting in the tub, and he asked the nanomachine to tell him about its healing abilities. At the same time, the nanomachine responded. The nanomachine explained that it could quickly heal external wounds and internal organ damage, but battle marks loss or loss of flesh would take much longer because they required cell division. Yeo-woon thought it sure liked to say a lot of things he didn't understand. Yeo-woon was still in the tub, and he wondered if it would be okay to test the nanomachine's abilities. Then, without hesitation, he sliced his hand with a knife. He yelled out in pain as the nanomachine announced it was starting to heal the knife wound. Yeo-woon was shocked, and the wound on his hand began to close up. The bleeding stopped almost instantly. He was amazed. Then he looked up from the water. Yeo-woon couldn't believe he had just seen that happen. He knew he could heal, but he wondered if he could use all the other abilities the nanomachine had given him. He decided he would test them out as soon as he was done with his bath. Yeo-woon started flexing his pecs. Yeo-woon couldn't believe it. His muscles had grown like he had been training for years. He asked if the nanomachine had done this too. The nanomachine confirmed that it had restructured his body. The old man came in with his clothes, calling him young master. Yeo-woon replied that it was scientifically impossible to create something from nothing. He added that it wasn't hard to restructure battle marks' vessels, tendons, and muscles. The old man thought Yeo-woon was talking strangely again, and that all the studying he did was a waste of time. Yeo-woon told Nano he was in the library and asked what he should do now. The nanomachine told him to hold a book in front of him and turn the pages one at a time. Yeo-woon asked if he should just skim them. The nanomachine said yes. It looked like the only martial arts books there were about acupoints and chi circulation. The nanomachine said that even if someone trained with the 3 powers breathing method for a lifetime, they probably wouldn't even reach the level of a third-rate master. It would probably be better to learn the acupoints. Yeo-woon told Nano he was gonna start. At the same time, Nano told the young master to proceed. Nano announced it was done and that the acupoint text was complete. Then Nano asked if he wanted to proceed with the transfer. Yeo-woon confirmed that was correct and told Nano to proceed. Immediately, a surge of energy coursed through him. There was a whooshing sound as the contents were transferred. Yeo-woon gasped and wobbled. Yeo-woon was still gasping for air, but Nano assured him that he would adjust soon. Nano then asked if he was worried about him. Yeo-woon called him a soulless scoundrel. Yeo-woon wondered what he should do now. He thought about the information he wanted, like when he received the transfer of the instruction manual. He knew that acupoints played an important role in the meridian channels and associated vessels for qi, and that the 2 major kinds of acupoints were critical and reservoir acupoints. He realized that critical acupoints are also called paralysis points because striking them can cause one to become momentarily paralyzed. Yeo-woon was shocked, saying it wasn't simply memorization and that he understood the whole text. Nano said that it had also corrected any errors in the text before transferring it. Yeo-woon was shocked that there were errors. Nano confirmed that it had corrected errors regarding the acupoints based on the information stored in its database. He realized that with this ability, he could study martial arts texts faster than anyone else. Yeo-woon smirked, thinking that the other 6 young masters had trained in the advanced martial arts since they were small. But because of their tact and watchful eyes, all he could learn was the 3 powers breathing method. He'd heard that the library in the Academy of the Demonic Arts held not only the demonic martial arts texts, but the texts pillaged from the righteous and evil factions as well. Yeo-woon realized that he had a clear goal now. He was gonna use his new ability to become the strongest at the Academy. Meanwhile, this was the residence of the stealth sex successor to the minor priesthood, located in the southeast corner within the demonic cult city walls. The guy was furious that he asked his squad to get rid of some trash, but all 5 of them died. He couldn't believe it. He figured a hidden master must have been involved, and he called out young Master Mijium's name. The other guy snapped his fingers, apologizing to young Master Chion. The man thought that someone of such low birth should be helpless, but it seemed he was hiding something. He had even separated him from his guard. He wondered if someone else was protecting him, maybe her father. The guy figured he didn't want to dirty his hands, but it looked like he didn't have a choice. Chion Yeo-woon clenched his fist, promising to kill the man himself at the Academy of Demonic Arts. The sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky with light. Turns out, Chion Yeo-woon was so nervous that he couldn't sleep at all. He was just lying in bed, wide awake. It seemed like it was still dawn, but it was finally the day for him to enter the Academy of Demonic Arts. Suddenly, a man appeared, swinging a sword right in front of the building. The guy kept swinging his sword around. Chion Yeo-woon was thinking that he should have learned Guard Zhang's dagger technique in secret, but he knew the other 6 sects always had their eyes on him. That's why he promised his mother on her deathbed that he wouldn't learn martial arts before entering the academy. Suddenly, he heard a voice calling him master. He was confused. At the same time, Guard Zhang was training. Yeo-woon looked shocked. Yeo-woon asked if someone could someone else's moves. The voice replied yes. Yeo-woon asked if they could guard Zhang's technique, and then transfer it to his brain. The nano said it had all kinds of martial arts data ready to transfer. But Yeo-woon wondered if he should really steal Guard Zhang's techniques without asking. He decided against waiting. He had to enter the academy without a guard, so he needed to learn to protect himself ASAP. Yeo-woon told the nano to start scanning Guard Zhang's moves. At the same time, Guard Zhang kept training with his daggers. Guard Zhang kept slashing through the air. Meanwhile, the nano continued to him. The nano announced that it took about an hour. It had successfully copied all of Guard Zhang's techniques. The nano started transferring the martial arts data to Yeo-woon's brain. The transfer finished, and the nano said it was getting easier for it to do this. Yeo-woon was shocked. He couldn't believe how well it worked. He felt the technique flowing through him. He knew Zhang's dagger technique. Yeo-woon realized he couldn't let Zhang see him like this. He might get suspicious. Yeo-woon took a deep breath and began practicing the shift step. Yeo-woon's eyes glowed with power, and immediately the ground around him shattered into pieces. He moved with incredible speed, practicing the martial art he had just learned. Yeo-woon realized he had mastered a technique he should have spent 20 years on, skipping the daily practice entirely. The nano asked if he wanted to transfer the muscle information to his body, but if he didn't, his body would be in pain. His body was in immense pain, and he asked the nano what was wrong with him. The nano explained that Yeo-woon had used the new technique without developing the muscles needed, which caused damage. Yeo-woon told the nano to make the explanation easier, feeling insulted by the nano's language. The nano adjusted the language and explained that young Master Chion hadn't trained with Guard Zhang's technique before, so his body wasn't used to it. The nano said that once his body got used to the move through simulation, the muscle information had to be transferred for him to master it. Yeo-woon understood that if the information transferred to his muscles, it wouldn't hurt anymore. The nano confirmed that was correct and asked if he wanted to start the transfer, which would take 2 hours. Yeo-woon said that was fine and told the nano to proceed. The nano warned that the process involved extreme pain, so he would be put to sleep, mentioning that many people faint during the process. Yeo-woon wondered if he should risk it. He asked if he could proceed without being put to sleep and if he could still be put to sleep if he couldn't handle it. The nano started the transfer. At first, Yeo-woon thought he had worried for nothing and that it just tickled. Suddenly, he was hit with a wave of pain and screamed. The nano started the anesthesia, and with that Yeo-woon passed out. Meanwhile, someone was cooking in the kitchen and tasted the food. He smiled, thinking he would go all out today and cook all of the young master's favorites. The cook remembered that it had been 5 years since he started cooking for Yeo-woon, and he couldn't even cook rice back then. A woman, seemingly on her deathbed, told Guard Zhang that she was leaving Yeo-woon in his hands. The cook looked up, thinking about how Lady Hua had died from small doses of poison 5 years ago and that the young master was now entering the Academy of Demonic Arts. He asked Lady Hua to watch over the young master so that he could cook for him again. Suddenly, Yeo-woon flinched, seemingly in pain. Immediately, the cook slammed open the door and asked if the young master was okay. The cook found the young master passed out on the table and shouted in surprise. Immediately, he checked Yeo-woon's pulse. The cook found that his pulse was normal, and he wondered what Yeo-woon had been doing. Then, the cook noticed some footprints on the ground. He touched the floor to see if they were still wet. The cook realized that the young master had been watching him train for about 2 years. He couldn't believe that Yeo-woon had caught up with 20 years of his training just by watching him for 2 years. The system announced that the conversion of muscle fibers and tendons was complete, and it was lifting the anesthesia. Yeo-woon woke up sweating. Yeo-woon was gasping for air, saying that he would never do that again. At the same time, Nano told him that it had warned him. Yeo-woon wondered why he was lying on the floor and if guard Jang had been there. Then, he noticed the dagger on the floor. Yeo-woon wondered if it would hurt to use the dagger technique now. Nano told him that it had converted his muscle fiber and tendons to the same level as someone who had trained for 20 years. Yeo-woon agreed and slashed with the dagger. Immediately, he was shocked by the power. Yeo-woon noticed that the sequence was the same, but his moves were more accurate and powerful. The feeling of slicing through the air was incredible to our hero. He slashed and twirled the dagger. Yeo-woon finished the first sequence. Then, he prepared for the first step of the second sequence. He stepped down with so much force that the floor cracked. Yeo-woon was surprised. He realized he was able to leave such deep footprints even without mastering the internal technique. Yeo-woon realized he had mastered the external technique, even though he had zero internal technique. He figured guard Jang was gonna be shocked when he saw this. At the same time, the cook knocked on the door to bring the young master his breakfast. The cook panicked, wondering what he should do. He realized pressing down on the floor wasn't helping at all. Meanwhile, the cook called out to the young master again. The cook entered the room, saying he was hungry today. He noticed that Yeo-woon always took his meals by the window. At the same time, Yeo-woon smiled, thinking he wouldn't be coming home for a while, so he felt like switching things up a bit. Yeo-woon hoped the cook didn't notice anything. He saw his favorite meal, sautéed bok choy, roast pork, and fried egg on rice. Yeo-woon thought the cook really knew him. And since he was entering the Academy of Demonic Arts today, this might be the last time he got to eat Jang's cooking. Suddenly, he felt acid reflux because of the change in emotion. Nano told him to swallow food and saliva to counteract the secretion of stomach acid. Yeo-woon told Nano to be quiet and stop talking in a language he couldn't understand. Yeo-woon decided to focus on his meal and planned to eat every last bite. Guard Jang told him to slow down, but the young master just said, "Right." Guard Jang thanked the young master. But then he got serious and asked when Yeo-woon had learned his dagger technique. Yeo-woon was confused and stammered, asking what Guard Jang meant by that. At the same time, Guard Jang dragged the barrel away. Guard Jang kept pulling the barrel, making a loud scraping sound. Guard Jang realized that this was the first step of the second sequence, and the mark was much deeper than before. He knew he wasn't mistaken. Yeo-woon knew that stealing another warrior's technique was a big no-no in Mirim. He thought he had been blinded by Nano's power and done something unforgivable. He had nothing to say, even if Guard Jang hated him for it. Guard Jang told the young master that he had done well. He didn't care that Yeo-woon had learned the technique in secret. He would have taught it to him sooner if it wasn't for the Pact of the Sixth Sex. Yeo-woon was surprised. And then he saw that Guard Jang was giving him the key tips to circulate chi for the dagger technique. He wondered why. Guard Jang added that he would also give him the breathing technique, but there would be far better texts in the academy. He told Yeo-woon that he would do better to learn those instead. A tear landed on the paper. Yeo-woon started to whimper. Guard Jang watched Yeo-woon's reaction. Yeo-woon, overwhelmed, swore he would never cry again. Guard Jang thought that it had been 5 years since Lady Hua had passed away, and the young master had been very brave since then. But he was still just a kid who needed his parents. Guard Jang continued, saying he couldn't be by his side once Yeo-woon entered the academy. He suggested Yeo-woon let out his tears now and become stronger from then on. Yeo-woon thanked him, wiping away his tears. Yeo-woon took a deep breath, promising himself no more fear and no more hesitation. He told himself that even though his mother was gone, he still had a home to go back to. The academy gate was now in sight. The crowd murmured, wondering if all the sects of the demonic cult were really here, estimating about 1,000 people. At the same time, some students were nervous now that they were actually at the academy. They knew this academy was also the grand tournament for the minor priesthood, so they had to be careful who they sided with. The new students looked excited, but Lee Hammond didn't see anyone with real fighting spirit this year. What a shame, he thought. Lee Hammond glared, warning the students that this could be the end for them. It was Lee Hammond, the right-hand royal bodyguard, one of the top 5 most powerful warriors in the cult. Lee Hammond noticed that the students in the first row looked promising. They must be the young masters from the Sixth Sex. The first student was Myeon Cheon from the Shadow Sect. Next up was Jeong Un Cheon of the Sword Clan. Then Mujeom Cheon from the Stealth Sect looked annoyed. Jongseom Cheon of the Poison Sect was also present. At the same time, Yuchan Cheon of the Saber Sect and Wonryo Cheon of the Musician Sect were also there. Lee Hammond mentioned the only female candidate in this year's grand tournament, then asked where student 7, Cheon Yeo-woon, was. Yeo-woon was told that they couldn't find his badge number, and unfortunately, that number was the only one they couldn't find. So, he had to wait until they found it. He figured this was some dirty trick by one of the other 6 sections. Fine, he'd wait. Maybe they didn't want to be aligned with him. Whatever. Nothing good could come from causing a scene this early on. Yeo-woon remembered that they were the scumbags who tried to kill him any chance they could. He was sure they'd come straight for his head if they saw him now, too. But he knew what? He survived and made it all the way here. He would become the strongest warrior here at the academy. There were so many people here, so the protagonist knew it was going to be impossible to stand in the front. The crowd started whispering about Yeowoon, who was number 7. They heard he didn't know anything about martial arts, and would be the first one out. Yeowoon could already guess what they were whispering about. He just scoffed, thinking they could laugh all they wanted. Oh, there he was, looking ridiculous standing all alone in the back. Lee Hammond watched, thinking this was how the illegitimate child was trying to get attention. How interesting. Suddenly, bugles started sounding. The crowd started chattering, saying that His Holiness was coming, and they needed to quiet down. The nobles walked by with their usual arrogance. At the same time, the students watched them pass. They kept walking, not paying attention to anyone. Meanwhile, a masked man kept glaring. The nobles kept muttering as they walked. Then a man stumbled forward. Lee Hammond clicked his tongue, asking why he was dressed in such shabby clothes, calling him a drunkard. The drunk man glared at Lee Hammond, asking what the hell the redhead was looking at. He introduced himself as Mad Blade Siab Meng, left-hand royal bodyguard to the Patriarch. Enragium Ma, the Lord of Darkness and head royal bodyguard, announced the beginning of the ceremony. At the same time, the camera focused on Cheon Yujong, the Patriarch, sitting on his throne. The crowd was buzzing, but Yeowoon could only focus on the Patriarch. He was overwhelmed by his father's presence, barely able to look at him. Rajiam Ma shouted, demanding silence from everyone. Rajiam Ma announced that they were ready and bowed to the Patriarch. The ceremony was about to begin. Rajiam Ma welcomed all the talented young ones to the academy, who would lead the cult's future. The crowd was surprised by his profound breathing technique. At the same time, Yeowoon could clearly hear his voice, even from the back row. Rajiam Ma continued, saying that at this academy, they would hone their skills and become the driving force behind the cult. And the crowd cheered. The crowd bowed, thanking their holiness. Meanwhile, a man glanced sideways. As the crowd listened to the speech, Yeowoon watched them with a cold expression. At the same time, the crowd seemed very excited about the academy. Someone turned around to look at Yeowoon. Meanwhile, Yeowoon's eyes narrowed. The guy thought it was the first time they'd ever met, but he was still so cold. He sighed. The guy thought it was fine. He didn't expect much from him anyway. He hadn't even seen him when his mother passed. Now that the speech was over, it was time to get down to business. As a result, the crowd started chattering. Lee Hammond was getting angry, and it showed on his face. At the same time, the students were flinching, sensing the shift in mood. Lee Hammond looked like he was about to explode. Lee Hammond announced that he was gonna make things simple and that they should listen up. Lee Hammond explained that at the academy, they would train through 6 stages over 4 years, and each stage would have an exam they could only try once. As a result, the students started murmuring, realizing how serious this was. Lee Hammond smirked, saying it looked like they all got the gist of it, and that students who failed would be kicked out. Then, someone lifted his hand to ask a question. One of the students raised his hand, wanting to ask something. Lee Hammond got angry and asked who dared to interrupt him. As a result, the student who raised his hand got a jolt of electricity. Lee Hammond questioned if the student had heard him. He asked what the student was gonna do about it. Lee Hammond reminded them that they lost all their privileges as heirs the moment they stepped into the academy. Lee Hammond asked if he wanted to be disqualified from the tournament before it even began. The student apologized immediately, realizing he had messed up. Lee Hammond knew what they were thinking. They only get one try at each test, so their chances of making it to the end are low. But those who pass each stage will get 3 special rewards. The first reward is a demonic dragon marble. One of the students wondered if it was what he thought it was. Turns out, it's a miracle medicine that can give you the power of 20 years of internal energy training. The students wondered if they could absorb 120 years worth of training if they passed all 6 stages and took all 6 marbles, which would make them masters already. But the more you absorb, the weaker the effects are, and it's hard to absorb the energy in the first place. If it was easy, the masters would have already taken them all. 6 stages, huh? Yeowoon thought to himself that he hasn't trained his internal techniques at all, but if he can pass the tests, he could improve them much quicker with the marbles. The second reward is access to the martial arts manuals. Lee Hammond explained that the manual library at the academy has 5 floors. Each time they move on to the next stage, 1 more floor will be unlocked. Lee Hammond explained that, depending on how well they do, they'll get to study manuals from the 6 sects and even the royal bodyguards. The students were excited, thinking this was their chance to learn divine techniques and become martial arts masters. Meanwhile, Yeowoon thought that if he's going to survive, access to those manuals is way more important than the marbles. Lee Hammond said that he could guarantee that none of them would reach the 5th floor, even in their dreams, so they should just forget about it. Meanwhile, Siab Meng thought that Lee Hammond has a knack for getting everyone excited and then making things awkward all of a sudden. He thought everything Li Hameng does is annoying. Li Hameng added that there was one last reward. Li Hameng continued, saying that they would have the opportunity to be granted statuses and positions that they previously couldn't have even dreamed of. One of the students realized that was why even minor priesthood candidates were put on the same level as everyone else there. He thought that's what they meant when they said everything would be changing once they entered the academy, and from that point on, it's survival of the fittest. Li Hameng explained that as they moved through each stage, they would be given statuses, like lower warrior, middle warrior, high warrior, sentry, and warden. He added that they shouldn't even worry about the last rank because none of them would ever get there, and most would probably stop at the third rank. Li Hameng continued, saying that it would be fine for those from regular warrior houses, but for those with more prestigious names, it would be a stain on their house's reputation to have their careers cut short at just a measly warrior rank. He asked if they could really say there were 6 stages to the academy's training, since reaching the last stage was pretty much impossible and that over the hundreds of years the academy had been running, less than 10 people had made it that far. Li Hameng stated that if they could rise through the ranks, their value would be acknowledged at the academy. He added that they might all begin at the same starting point, but as things progressed, they would find themselves at different points within the hierarchy and would have to follow it. One of the students realized that before, just staying alive was the only thing he needed to focus on, but now he would need to beat the competition if he wanted to survive. Li Hameng said that was the gist of how things would go there. He announced that they would begin the first stage examination to assign them to their dorms and groups. One of the students was shocked. The students started muttering, shocked that they were already taking the stage examination. They complained that they weren't supposed to be tested before being taught anything. Li Hameng said that if they couldn't pass the examination, they would be kicked out of the academy. He added that those who failed weren't worthy of even a lower warrior title. Li Hameng explained that the first stage examination would test their basic abilities. He said that to become a warrior of the academy, they should at least be able to harness their internal power. Meanwhile, one of the students looked shocked. Li Hameng said that they still needed people to fulfill the lowly jobs, so they could feel free to slack off. But the protagonist realized that this was why the ladies of the other 6 sects vowed to ensure he never honed his internal powers. He thought that if he didn't pass the examination, he would end up with no status and at the bottom of the hierarchy. Then, they would just come and try to kill him in broad daylight. He smirked at the thought. The guy smirked, thinking the system was perfect because he wouldn't have to dirty his hands trying to kill that disgusting little vermin. But then he looked confused. Everyone looked towards the stage, curious about what was going to happen next. A woman stood there holding a musical instrument. Li Hameng announced that Madame Soyahang, head of the musician sect and 5th elder of the demonic warrior cult, would be proctoring their first examination. At the bottom, Madame Soyahang held her instrument. Li Hameng told them that the examination should be a breeze for all of them. He added that if they failed there, they wouldn't even amount to a lower warrior. The guy was surprised, wondering what the head of the musician sect was doing there, since she almost never showed up in public. He wondered if she was gonna do what he thought she was gonna do. The students started covering their ears. At the same time, Li Hameng said that if Madame Hang went all out, the students wouldn't make it out alive. He said she was gonna go easy on them, so they didn't need to worry. Madame Hang thought the students should be able to handle it for a minute if they had even a little bit of internal power. Li Hameng announced that those who could withstand Madame Hang's musical force without passing out would pass the first examination. He then yelled to begin. And with that, the students were blasted with a powerful musical force. The students were getting hit hard by the sound waves. One of the students was screaming, saying he could still hear the music even with his ears covered. At the same time, Madame Hang kept playing her instrument. Someone noticed that most of the students in the middle row from the lower sects had already passed out. But the heirs to the 6 sects, and those from higher sects were doing just fine. One of the guys thought this was pretty strong stuff. Meanwhile, Madame Hang kept playing. The guy thought that as heirs to the 6 sects, they had taken lots of medicine from a young age to cleanse their bodies and foster their internal power. He figured that trash with no internal power must be on the floor by now. The sound waves kept hitting the students, but one of them felt like something was off. He thought that something didn't feel right. Madame Hang started strumming the instrument faster and faster. The student couldn't take it anymore. He wondered why Madame Hang was doing this to them. He was starting to feel really bad. Madame Hang's eyes widened as she wondered why he wasn't fainting. It was Yeo Woon Cheon who was still standing strong. Yeo Woon was confused because over half the people in the drill hall had fainted. He wondered if they had all suffered internal injuries. And then he wondered how he was still fine. The nanomachines explained that the sound waves from the mandolin performance had created powerful frequencies. An emergency defense mode was activated to block the sound waves after detecting possible severe bodily injuries. Yeo Woon realized that the nanomachines made sure he wouldn't hear the sound of the mandolin. Nano confirmed that he had temporarily blocked off the bodily functions that detect sounds to defend against external trauma. Yeo Woon asked how he could hear him right now, and Nano said that he was relaying the information directly to his brain. Yeo-woon admitted that he still didn't understand him sometimes. Meanwhile, Lee Hammond glared with his red eyes. One of the students shivered. Yeo-woon asked Nano if he could protect him from that evil gaze coming from Lee Hammond, but then he quickly changed his mind. He could tell that Madame Hang was getting impatient with her performance, and the power coming from her music was a lot stronger than before. Lee Hammond realized it must be because of Yeo-woon. He had heard that the young master had no internal powers, but it didn't seem true, since he wasn't even using any chi adjustment techniques to keep calm. Lee Hammond thought he had never seen such an interesting outcome since he was appointed as an academy deputy, and he wondered how long Yeo-woon would last. Meanwhile, some students started bleeding from their ears. One of the students realized that 20 years of tuning his internal power wasn't enough to block this music. He thought the minute should be over soon, and he had to stay calm to protect the reputation of their sect. He wondered why Madame Hang was playing so intensely, and by her face, she looked really angry too. The music was getting intense, and one of the students suddenly yelled to wait a minute. The young lady looked back, wondering what was happening. At the same time, the other students were also confused. They wondered why he looked so startled, and if something was going on behind them. Turning around, they could hear the music getting louder. The students couldn't believe that someone like Yeo-woon, who didn't have any internal power, could stay so calm. It just didn't make any sense to them. Yeo-woon was talking to Nano, wondering if he was just imagining things, but it looked like everyone was angry at him. He asked Nano to analyze their facial expressions. Nano showed him that the facial muscle conditions suggested emotions of absurdity, surprise, petulance, and anger. Yeo-woon thought none of this felt real because he couldn't hear anything, but he could definitely see their hostility towards him. There was no doubt that they were annoyed that he was doing just fine and thought he had no internal powers. Yeo-woon realized that if he made it past this first test, no one would believe he didn't have internal powers. He asked Nano if there was any way he could give himself internal injuries on purpose. Nano asked if he meant injuring his organs. Yeo-woon confirmed it, but Nano didn't suggest hurting himself on purpose. Yeo-woon said it was fine and that once her performance was over, he wanted Nano to hurt his organs and make him throw up battle marks. Nano agreed and said he was starting the forced internal damage. The minute was almost up. The woman playing the instrument wondered how the lowly trash, who couldn't be older than 15, was still standing. She refused to let it end like this. How dare he insult her like this? She would raise her powers and tear him apart. There was no way he could handle this. Lee Hammond thought this was dangerous. At the same time, the woman kept playing the instrument. Madame Hang kept playing, and the sound made people want to throw up. Lee Hammond yelled at Madame Hang to stop because it was too dangerous. Madame Hang ignored Lee Hammond and kept playing. At the same time, the students were all passed out on the ground. The students were coughing and barely able to stand. The guy with the bottle thought that if she had turned it up even a little bit more, no one would have passed the first test. He couldn't believe she was acting like that. Madame Hang wondered what was going on and realized she'd gotten angry and used half her power on that little brat. The woman was angry that the brat broke the rules. She blamed Yeo-woon for everything. Yeo-woon twitched, while a student started to feel sick. The student started vomiting battle marks, while Lee Hammond looked worried and Madame Hang kept playing. Another student looked up, confused about what was happening. A student fell to the ground, coughing up a ton of battle marks. People around him were wondering what had happened. The student looked up, realizing it was the nanomachine's fault. It had done damage to his organs to make him throw up as much battle marks as possible. He realized he wasn't dying, after all. He kept coughing, battle marks splattering everywhere. Lee Hammond realized that if the student died during the exam, the responsibility would fall on him as the academy deputy. He couldn't let the kid die, since he shared battle marks with the Holy One. Lee Hammond rushed forward, grabbing the student. He asked if he was alright. The nanomachine told him that he was suffering from battle marks loss, and would fix his organs. Lee Hammond was holding Yeo-woon, who had just passed out. He told him that he didn't have to act so tough and could have just fainted. Lee Hammond was worried, thinking that the young master was in critical condition. He wondered how strong his internal powers were to have endured all of that. Then, Lee Hammond realized that Yeo-woon didn't have any internal powers at all. Lee Hammond was shocked, saying that Yeo-woon was just a reckless little brat. He didn't expect much from the unlucky 7th young lord. Lee Hammond thought that Yeo-woon made it through the first examination with no internal powers and only through his own determination. He waved for the demonic way. Lee Hammond ordered everyone to bow and take Yeo-woon to the infirmary. Lying in someone's arms, covered in battle marks, Yeo-woon begged the nanomachine to hurry and heal him. Madame Hang was confused. She thought he was doing fine against her music, but he had suffered serious injuries. Then, Lee Hammond moved with incredible speed. He told Madame Hang that she had crossed the line. Madame Hang asked what he meant by that. He shot back, saying that she almost killed the boy. Madame Hang wondered if the kid had weak internal powers, but then realized that he didn't have any to begin with. Lee Hammond explained that he had tried to stimulate him with raw energy to see if he would get a reaction, but nothing happened, and his pulse was the same. Madame Hang was shocked. She couldn't believe that he could endure her musical force without even the slightest internal power. If what Lee Hammond was saying was true, the boys should have fainted like the rest of the students. Lee Hammond said that Yeo Woon had suffered severe internal injuries and had endured her music solely through his own determination. Madame Hang was surprised, commenting that the boy had a shockingly strong will to survive. Lee Hammond thought that if it weren't for the boy's low status, he would have taken him as his student. But he knew that nothing good could come from defying the sixth sex. Suddenly, Siab Meng started chugging down alcohol from his gourd. Siab Meng was impressed that the kid had endured all that just through his own will. He thought that was pretty wild. Lee Hammond told him to mind his own business and go get drunk in some lonely corner like he usually does. Siab Meng scoffed and said screw him. He was going to leave anyway. Then he told the redhead to get lost, adding that he'd be dead in a ditch by now if it wasn't for Sir Ma. He warned him to watch his mouth. Lee Hammond shot back, saying he didn't want to hear any of that from Siab Meng's alcohol-soaked mouth. He added that if anything, Siab Meng would be the one buried in the ground if it wasn't for Sir Ma. He demanded to know what Siab Meng had said. Suddenly, the two bodyguards were at each other's throats, their energy clashing violently. At the same time, the crowd watching could feel the raw power of their attacks. The energy in the air was becoming really unstable. The left and right-hand bodyguards were really going at it. The ground was cracking and breaking under the force of their attacks. Siab Meng scoffed, saying forget it. He was out of there, calling them little wusses as he walked away. Siab Meng looked at the students sprawled out on the ground, saying they had no grit these days. He grumbled that it was all because of a little mandolin playing. But he thought that one student was different. Siab Meng said he liked Yeo Woon and that he had his eye on him. So, the story shifts to the Demonic Academy's main building. Inside the infirmary, Dr. Baek Jong-myung was writing in his book. Suddenly, someone shouted that there was a patient. The guy yelled again that there was a patient, and punched the doctor. The doctor was shocked, as two guys with a stretcher walked in, saying there was a real patient. The doctor was excited that there was a patient on the first day. He thought the Demonic Academy was the best, and wondered what was up with the patient. He heard that the patient was Baek Jong-woo's student, but he seemed crazy about medical practice. The doctor told them this wasn't the time to be like this, and told them to come in. The doctor looked at Yeo Woon on the stretcher, wondering how hard the test could be for a person to be in this kind of condition. He asked if Yeo Woon got stabbed in the stomach, but realized he was wounded internally. The doctor was surprised that this was from internal damage. He was told that since Yeo Woon didn't have any nigong, the left guardian asked that he take special care of him. The doctor thought that in the 10 years he'd been his teacher's student, he had never seen so much battle marks from an internal injury. Anyway, they said that since they dropped him off at the infirmary, they would be on their way. Then they started walking away. One of the men asked the other why he was so slow when they were busy. The other guy replied that it was nothing. The man with the beard looked back and said that the kid's complexion looked a lot better than before, and wondered if he was mistaken. At that moment, Yeo Woon looked at his hand, which was covered in battle marks. The doctor felt Yeo Woon's pulse. The young master thought to himself that he had forgotten that he was in the infirmary, and almost healed all the internal damage. The protagonist thought that it still hurt a lot, but he had to endure it until the doctor was done. The doctor thought that the pulse was clearly irregular and fast, so he must have taken a lot of damage. The doctor thought that it was still very weird, and even if someone bit their tongue, they wouldn't bleed this much. The doctor figured he'd start with some acupuncture. Suddenly, the doctor got hit by a bunch of needles and screamed. The doctor was super scared and asked if the right guardian was okay. Siab Meng showed up drinking and asked what was going on. The doctor was surprised to see him and said that the little guy who used to cling to his teacher like a coward had become the academy's doctor, and that he still had that annoying tone. Siab Meng asked what the right guardian was doing at the infirmary, since he shouldn't be hurt at all. Hamming said he didn't want to be there either, telling him to rest well. Siab Meng watched him leave, saying he could never figure Lee Hamming out. He turned his head back to look at Yeo Woon, saying that he was a very interesting kid. Yeo Woon was still lying in bed, seemingly surprised by something. Yeo Woon was lying in bed, still pretending to be hurt, but he was thinking about something. He wondered why someone was in the infirmary. He suddenly smelled alcohol. It was Siab Meng. Siab Meng was standing over him, asking why he was pretending to be asleep. Siab Meng's hand was glowing with energy. Siab Meng attacked, but Yeo Woon managed to block it while still lying down. He was surprised. Someone was watching the fight and was stunned by what he saw. He couldn't believe that someone could raise a person without even touching them. He thought that Yeo Woon must be the right guardian of the school. Yeo Woon was sitting up, surrounded by blue energy. He wondered if he had been sat up using internal energy. Our hero tried to move, but he couldn't. His body wasn't fixed yet. Siab Meng was still standing over him, smiling. He warned that if Yeo Woon kept pretending to sleep, he would hit him in the face. Yeo Woon realized he had been caught. Yeo Woon was shocked that he had been caught, wondering how Xiao Meng knew he was awake. Xiao Meng just smirked. Xiao Meng started laughing, finding the whole situation pretty funny. Yeo Woon looked up at him, but Xiao Meng just kept laughing, saying that he shouldn't be so bold in front of a guardian. Xiao Meng grabbed the young master by the neck, explaining that any experienced warrior could tell if someone was faking sleep just by listening to their breathing. Yeo Woon was surprised that Xiao Meng could tell just from his breathing. Xiao Meng explained that the average breathing count for a young man is about 12 to 20 per minute, but Yeo Woon's breathing was 8 times that, which made it unnatural. He added that he didn't need any unnecessary information. Xiao Meng started laughing, saying that kids these days didn't have the insides that Yeo Woon did, adding that he was pretty good. Yeo Woon wondered if Xiao Meng had come because he noticed he was pretending. Xiao Meng looked down at the young master, saying that kids these days didn't have any endurance, and always wanted to take the easy way out when things got a little difficult. He admitted that he didn't endure it with sheer will. Xiao Meng pointed at Yeo Woon, telling him that he had the will that the others didn't. Xiao Meng told the right guardian that the patient wasn't doing so well and should get treatment first. He then told the other man to wait because an adult was talking. Suddenly, Yeo Woon coughed up battle marks. At the same time, Xiao Meng pointed out that Yeo Woon's face didn't look good. Meanwhile, Yeo Woon coughed up even more battle marks. Then, someone noticed that he had let go of his energy. As a result, Yeo Woon fell to the ground. He complained that his neck hurt, and that he would get to the point. Suddenly, someone announced that he wanted to take the kid as his student. Li Hameng was grinning like a maniac. Xiao Meng looked at Li Hameng, confused. Yeo Woon was still lying on the ground, hurt. Li Hameng didn't care and started drinking from his flask. Xiao Meng was shocked, staring at him, while Yeo Woon was still out cold. Li Hameng was serious. He said he wanted to take the kid as his student. Li Hameng looked down at the kid, asking if anyone didn't know who he was. Yeo Woon, still on the ground, asked if the 6 clans wouldn't hate him for taking him in. Li Hameng just laughed. He asked what they could even do about it. Li Hameng added that they'd still have to compete with each other, with or without him. Yeo Woon was lying down, thinking that this was a great chance, but he wondered if it was a trap. Xiao Meng was watching him quietly. Xiao Meng thought that this was the famous 7th prince. He knew they'd play tricks at the academy, but making him lose so much battle marks was too much. Yeo Woon didn't know what to say because the offer was so sudden. He'd also have a teacher in the academy. He was worried that he'd look like he was begging to be his student. Xiao Meng figured the kid had a lot of doubts, which was to be expected after the life he'd lived. Yeo Woon finally said that he would do it. Xiao Meng was smiling, saying that if he wasn't convinced, he'd offer something that he couldn't turn down. Xiao Meng stood over him. He asked what the paper was, saying it was what he needed to survive in the academy. Xiao Meng smirked, pointing out that he was stuck in the infirmary as soon as he got to the academy. He asked if he wasn't worried about falling behind, even though he was able to pass the first test with sheer will. He wondered if someone without Nigong like him could pass the second test. Xiao Meng pointed out that anyone who wanted to be a warrior needed to think a step ahead of others, asking if he was planning on staying in the infirmary for 2 weeks and getting pushed behind from the start. He knew that while he was stuck in this place, the others would certainly move forward a lot. He couldn't deny that, but he'd have to stay here for a bit to avoid suspicion. Xiao Meng took a swig from his jug, looking like he was about to start something. Xiao Meng asked if he knew why that redhead jerk sent him here, the left guardian? He continued, asking if it wasn't weird. There were many other kids that were damaged internally. Xiao Meng asked why the left guardian didn't send them here instead. Xiao Meng explained that most people of Murim could heal internal damage through meditation, but it would be faster if they were treated by a doctor or medicine. So, what did he mean? Xiao Meng pointed out that the other kids could at least try to heal themselves, so there was no reason to send them to the infirmary. Yeo Woon realized that's why he was all alone in the infirmary, because he couldn't even heal himself. Xiao Meng thought to himself that he was almost there with the kid, and wondered if he should wrap things up now. Xiao Meng scoffed, thinking about a kid that couldn't even meditate to heal. Xiao Meng asked if he thought someone like that could cure internal damage in a short amount of time. Yeo Woon thought to himself that it was possible because he had the nano. Yeo Woon was still lying down when he realized he needed Nigong to reach the next stage. He suddenly remembered something else. He recalled that if he passed the first test, he would get the medicine ball and access to the academy's library. Xiao Meng started laughing, which confused the boy. Xiao Meng said that the redhead forgot to mention something important. He smirked, explaining that the academy's library wasn't a place where people could just come and go as they pleased. Yeo Woon was shocked when he heard that he could only enter the library after passing a test. He shouted, "What?" Xiao Meng grinned, starting to explain. He told the boy that the library was very secure. Yeo Woon was silent for a moment, processing everything. Siab Ming continued, saying that he could only stay on the first floor for 2 hours. Siab Ming chuckled, saying that there were limits, and it was like crossing mountains all the time. He added that the time he got to spend there would increase as he went higher up. Siab Ming continued, explaining that he wasn't allowed to write anything down. He had to memorize everything before he left. He added that memorizing just 2 books was already a lot. Yeo Woon realized that this gave him a huge advantage. With the nanomachine scanning skills, our hero thought he could probably hundreds of books in 2 hours. Siab Meng finished by saying that 4 years at the Demonic Academy would really test the boy's limits, especially since he didn't have any inner energy. Yeo Woon wondered if Siab Meng was implying that he was different from the others, since most of them had trained in their clan's martial arts, and he had neither martial arts nor inner energy. To survive the threat of the 6 clans, Yeo Woon wondered if he really needed to become Li Haming's student. Yeo Woon noticed a paper lying next to his head. He wondered if it was the breath of Nigong. Li Haming chuckled, saying that Yeo Woon wasn't as dumb as he thought. He confirmed that it was indeed the breath of Nigong and offered to teach it to him right away if he became his student. Yeo Woon clenched his fist, thinking that even if he wasn't sure about Li Haming's intentions, he needed someone on his side. He realized this was his chance to learn the breath of Nigong, something he couldn't because of his oath with the 6 clans. Li Haming smirked. Without hesitation, Yeo Woon dropped to his knees. He asked Li Haming to accept him as a student, acknowledging him as his right guardian. Li Haming smirked, enjoying this. A student must bow to his teacher twice. Li Haming used his energy to lift the boy, telling him to get up. Yeo Woon looked shocked as he was lifted into the air by Li Haming's power. Li Haming declared that the battle marks of Cheon shouldn't bow to anyone other than the Lord himself. Li Haming told him to rest for the day, and to memorize the points of the breath of Nigong until he got back. Li Haming told his henchmen to take good care of his new student before hitting him on the head. Yeo Woon was still lying down, but Li Haming was already leaving with a smile on his face, but his breath stank as always. Baki asked if our hero was okay, saying it was as chaotic as if a storm had passed by. Baki congratulated the boy on becoming the right guardian student. Yeo Woon thanked him for that. The man checked his pulse, saying that his internal damage had messed him up pretty bad, and that he would be back with acupuncture tools soon. Yeo Woon just said okay as he lay there. He thought about how many opportunities he'd been given, thanks to Nano and the right guardian. In the middle of all these enemies at the academy, he thought about his mother and guard Zhang. He realized that for once, there was someone on his side. The Demonic Academy's practice field was vast, full of students. At the same time, some people were sitting, probably waiting for something. Meanwhile, another group was standing and looking in the same direction. Li Haming told the left guardian that he would report the results of the first test. Ho Jinchang reported that 415 people passed, including Cadet 7, who was taken to the infirmary. Li Haming thought that was 200 less than the first test from 10 years ago, and that Elder Hang's energy waves were too much. Li Haming figured that the ones who failed probably didn't think it was fair. One student yelled that he didn't pass out, and he shouldn't be kicked out just because he had bubbles coming out of his mouth. He said it wasn't fair. Another student asked if they didn't understand. He asked if they thought they could live their whole lives in service or farming, and how he was supposed to live a life like that. A man said that it seemed like they couldn't accept the results. He agreed with them, and said there was no other choice. He commanded that the rebelling ones be kicked out of the Demonic Academy. A dude yelled as he got punched right in the face. He coughed, and then another man punched him. The force of the punch sent the guy flying backwards. Man with white hair clicked his tongue, saying that the ones in front had great skills, and the ones who were kicked out wouldn't be able to beat them. He figured that because they were being stubborn, they wouldn't learn anything. Li Haming said that if it were him, he'd say it was unfair too. He said that it was because of Cadet 7 that the first test was so hard. The man looked down at the bodies and said that they didn't have luck or skills. He added that it was also their fate. Li Haming said that among the ones who passed the first test, there were a good amount of exceptional kids, and asked if the other man thought so too. The speaker continued, noting that most of them had internal damage and were in meditation. He finished by saying that 8 of the candidates of the 6 clans in the upper clans seemed to have made it through easily. The man said that some of the cadets were already way stronger than the others. He explained that to not get hurt by Elder Hang's energy waves, someone would need to train for hundreds of years. He added that these students were on a whole other level. The first was Cheon Muyun from the Dark Clan, and the other was Cheon Yuchan from the Blade Clan. The man went on, saying that both of them took the energy waves without even moving. He heard that the Dark Clan and the Blade Clan would be the ones fighting for the win. Li Haming smirked, stating that it was just as he thought. Someone thought that this was gonna be interesting, haha. Someone congratulated them on passing the first test. They would get a bronze medal showing that they were now part of the lower ranks of the academy, and for the next 4 years, they would train as cadets. The students were told that here at the Demonic Academy, they weren't allowed to answer with yes or no. They had to answer motto, and anything else was like asking to repeat an order. Lee Hamming then told them to start organizing into groups. Someone was ready to start the treatment. Now that he was done preparing, the wounded man asked for the doctor. The doctor corrected him, saying his name was Baek Jong-myung. Baek Jong-myung said that instead of just calling him doctor, he should include his last name. Dr. Baek then asked if his condition was that bad, and apologized for having to say that to a cadet of the demonic academy. The wounded man was shocked to hear that it would take 11 to 15 days before he could even try out for the next test. He screamed, asking what he was supposed to do. He thought to himself, what if Nano started healing him? The treatment would be over instantly, but if he healed up too fast, they would get suspicious. The protagonist thought that if he got the normal treatment, he would fall behind in training. Besides, he didn't know anything about the tests after the first one, since he had been taken to the infirmary. The other man told him not to be disappointed. He said that if he was treated by a normal doctor, it would take months, but it would be a lot shorter because he was Baek Jong-woo's student. The man told him that it would still take a long time, even with training. The wounded man said that this might not help, but he would pretend he didn't know the other man was learning martial arts from the right guardian. He thanked him, saying he would repay him in the future. The other man replied that it was fine and that he didn't expect much anyway. The man suddenly spun around, telling him that since they would be doing acupuncture, he was going to have to take off his clothes. The man thought to himself about this kid. The man thought to himself that even though he knew that Yeo Woon didn't learn any martial arts, his body was a lot nicer than he thought. The man wondered if he didn't get it through Nigong. Did he learn Wei Gong? The man told him that the first one goes in the middle of his chest. Suddenly, the nanomachine sensed an attempt to damage the user's body with a sharp iron needle, and activated self-defense mode. Yeo Woon yelled at the nano, telling it to stop, because the doctor was doing this for treatment. He asked if it didn't know how to differentiate between an attack and treatment. The nanomachines deactivated their self-defense mode, like Yeo Woon told them to. He was just glad he survived. The nanomachines warned that if he didn't tell them about treatments beforehand, they would consider any damage to his body as an attack. They said they understood his instructions. Yeo Woon looked at his stomach, confused. He realized his stomach was starting to hurt less. The system then started to retrieve information from its built-in acupuncture diagram. The nanomachines explained that the acupuncture needles were placed down his chest, under his heart, and on his arm. They pinpointed the exact spots that enhance regeneration in the stomach area. Yeo Woon realized he was able to understand things easier with the information the nanomachines transferred. Then, someone told him to take a nap while the acupuncture did its thing, because he was making them blush by staring. He said that, but he couldn't sleep with the nanomachines explaining everything. He was lying down, thinking about toes, under the knee, and shins. Suddenly, he gasped. Yeo Woon wondered if the nanomachines could treat his internal injuries. The treatment would go faster, right? But he realized if he got healed too quickly, they'd get suspicious. Yeo Woon asked if he could be healed, but still look wounded. Turns out, after the treatment, it's possible to mess with his pulse to make it look like his organs are damaged. Yeo Woon said he was only asking just in case, but he was glad it was possible. If he could fool Dr. Beck for a couple of weeks, he'd have a chance to learn from the right guardian. Yeo Woon told the nanomachines to heal him now and fool Dr. Beck when he comes to check on him. He understood, Master. The nanomachines confirmed they were starting self-recovery mode as commanded by the user. The sun was setting over the mountains. Suddenly, a man yelled for the cadets to pay attention. He then ordered them to get in line. Lee Hamming spoke to the cadets. Lee Hamming announced that he was going to explain their next test. Lee Hamming explained that until the third test, all cadets would take the test at the same time. To become a mid-level warrior, they needed to know tactics and strategies. He then told them they only had 20 days. The cadets started freaking out, saying 20 days wasn't enough time to learn all those tactics. Lee Hamming asked if they were curious why there were 20 groups. He said that in 3 weeks, only 10 groups would move on. The cadets realized that half of them would be kicked out. One of them complained that they didn't have any top cadets in their group. The cadets knew that the 6 clans probably had an advantage in the tests. Lee Hamming said that this was the first and last test that required them to work together, so if they wanted to compete, they could just fail together. He was still a man that was good at making people feel bad. Lee Hamming then announced that today's schedule was done, and they could return to their rooms and rest. He added that starting tomorrow, they would be taught by the staff standing in front of them, and they'd be teaching them tactics and techniques very kindly. The cadets questioned if they were really going to be kind, since they were the ones who beat up the rebellious cadets. Just like that, the instructor dismissed everyone. The cadets started to head back to their rooms. It was Group 8 instructor Impyeong. Impyeong noticed that one of the cadets was still around, so he asked him why he was still there. It was Spring Clan candidate Cheon Moo-kyum, and he said that he had a question for the instructor. Impyeong reminded him that he couldn't answer questions related to training. Cheon Moo-kyum understood, so Impyeong asked what he wanted to know. He answered that he was pretty sure he'd be the leader of Group 8. Impyong explained that the selection for team leaders was supposed to happen tomorrow, but the 6 clans always found the rules ridiculous. Jeon Moo-kyung then pointed out that Cadet 7, who was assigned to their group, was in the infirmary. Impyong asked what that had to do with anything. Jeon Moo-kyung said that with one person missing from a group test, he didn't want their whole group to fail. The guy explained that because Cadet 7 didn't go to the ceremony, he wouldn't know what was going on. So, he wanted to tell him everything. The other man just stared back without saying anything. Suddenly, another guy with an evil grin said that Cadet 7 was in the same group as him, and his luck had run out. He added that he would personally go to the infirmary to mess with Cadet 7's limbs. The first guy agreed that it was a good idea, saying that the other man seemed to understand the basics, and complimented him on his first day. The instructor said he would take their advice and deliver the information to Cadet 7 himself. He seemed really mad about it. One of the cadets reached out, telling the instructor that he didn't need to do that, and that he could go himself. The instructor gave him a death stare, explaining that the main building was off limits to cadets unless they had special permission. The cadet realized he wouldn't be able to get into the main building. He was starting to panic because so many things were going wrong. He knew he was a candidate from the Spring Clan, but that meant nothing here. He was out of options. The cadet understood and then asked the instructor one last favor before telling him to head back to his dorm. The instructor stopped, asking if there was something else he wanted to say. Cadet asked if he could at least know when Cadet 7 would start joining them. The instructor said there was no problem with that, and that he would tell him tomorrow since it was too late today. The guy thanked him. Now that things had come to this, the cadet knew he'd have to wait until the protagonists returned to their dorm. Someone yelled at the guy on the ground to hurry up and get better, calling him a lowly bastard. The guy looked down with a nasty grin, promising to make the loser feel so much pain that he would wish for death. It was night at the Demonic Academy's main building. Turns out, the guy with the head bandage was gonna be stuck in the infirmary for 14 days. The man confirmed it, saying that the internal damage was so bad, he would have to stay for at least 14 days. One of the men sighed, saying that if he stayed there that long, it would be hard for him to get to the top level. He then asked if there was anything that could make it go faster. The other man replied that that's what he was asking, saying that if only Cadet 7 had Nigong, but Cadet 7 had none at all. The man said that since he didn't have it, there was no other option but to take a long time, adding that the second test was in only 3 weeks. The man couldn't believe that he would have to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. He didn't want his group to be eliminated just because of that one guy. Meanwhile, another man appeared asking if he could speak to Cadet 7, saying that he had a lot to tell him. The man thought that he was sleeping right now, so it would be hard to do. He wondered if he should wake him up, but decided not to, saying that he'd come back tomorrow, since he'd be here tomorrow anyway. And with that, the man said goodbye and left. A man watched someone, thinking about how he only barely managed to pass the first test. The man clicked his tongue, not impressed. He walked into the room, thinking this must be the end of the guy's luck. Inside, Yeo Woon was sleeping soundly. Outside, the moon shone brightly in the night sky. The night was dark, and the wind was blowing. Someone was moving fast through the forest. They were moving so fast, it was almost hard to see them. The figure stopped in front of a building. The curtains inside were blowing in the wind. Yeo Woon's expression was serious. Suddenly, someone got kicked hard. Protagonist was sent flying, crashing through the paper wall. A man laughed, announcing that the student's teacher had arrived. Yeo Woon looked up, shocked, and asked if it was the teacher. Turns out, Seop Meng was right behind him, breathing pure alcohol fumes right into Yeo Woon's face. The guy took another swig from his bottle, hiccuping as he asked if Yeo Woon wasn't going to greet him. Yeo Woon turned around and greeted his teacher good morning. Seop Meng seemed satisfied and asked if he'd finished the homework he gave him yesterday. Yeo Woon looked confused, wondering what homework he was talking about. Seop Meng asked if he was talking about the breath of Nigong, reminding him that he told him to memorize it all before he came back. Yeo Woon thought back, remembering that he was taken to the infirmary and treated just yesterday. Seop Meng looked annoyed, asking if he possibly didn't memorize everything. Yeo Woon was glad he was treated by the nanomachines beforehand, saying that of course he memorized it. Seop Meng was surprised that he memorized all of it while he was sick, admitting that he only said that to provoke him. Lee Hamming said that Yeo Woon did a good job on the homework he gave him, and Yeo Woon thanked him for the compliment. Lee Hamming wondered if he came too early, asking if he was tired, but then said that wasn't it. Lee Hamming was glad, saying he would tell him this because he had to know anyway. Lee Hamming told him that he could only teach him for 2 weeks, and Yeo Woon was shocked. Lee Hamming explained that he could come see him in the infirmary, but once he went to his dorm, he wouldn't be able to contact him. Lee Hamming realized that Yeo Woon couldn't have known about his situation since he was in the hospital when he arrived. Lee Hamming explained that he had to work as a main teacher during the day, so he could only come early, or people would get suspicious. Lee Hamming continued, explaining that it was against the rules to receive training from outsiders in the demonic academy. If he got caught, it would only make things worse. Yeo Woon thanked him for his consideration, saying that he thought Lee Hammond would be stubborn, but he was paying a lot of attention. Lee Hammond agreed, saying that since they didn't have much time, they should get started. Yeo Woon was surprised, asking if he meant right now. Lee Hammond, looking impatient, reminded him that they didn't have much time to waste. Yeo Woon understood and turned around to sit on the ground. Lee Hammond yelled at him to hurry up. Yeo Woon wondered why he was doing all this. Lee Hammond told him it was a good thing that he had memorized his breathing technique of 1,000 martials. Lee Hammond placed his hand on Yeo Woon's chest. Lee Hammond told him that because they didn't have much time, he would stuff the flow into him. Yeo Woon was confused and asked what he meant by stuffing it in. Lee Hammond explained that it was a sophisticated way his great-grandfather created and that Yeo Woon didn't need to feel the chi because his teacher would do everything for him. Lee Hammond told Yeo Woon to clench his jaw, warning him that if he screamed and the guards came, it would be the end. Yeo Woon screamed in pain. Lee Hammond told him to shut his mouth. At the same time, the nanomachine started analyzing the intangible energy that had entered Yeo Woon's battle marks. The system identified the energy as chi or chakra, and it began to analyze the effect it was having on the young master's body. Yeo Woon realized that the instructor's strong Nigong was forcing his veins to open, but it was too much for him to handle. Lee Hammond wondered what was happening with the kid. Lee Hammond couldn't believe Yeo Woon hadn't learned anything. He couldn't find any blockages in his body. He noticed that Yeo Woon's muscles looked like they had been training, but as far as Lee Hammond knew, he hadn't learned any martial arts. Lee Hammond wondered if the Lord was involved. The woman smiled. Lee Hammond guessed that out of all his 7 wives, the Lord only cared about Lady Hua. So maybe he cared for this child secretly. The man grinned, saying that things had turned out great. He figured that with Yeo Woon in that state, it should only take about a week to create a good amount of Nigong. Meanwhile, back at the Demonic Academy dorms, someone punched with incredible force. The guy in the suit followed up with a powerful kick. The man screamed, calling him Prince and asking if he was okay. The other guys told him to get a hold of himself, and asked who he thought he was, attacking Cheon-jan, some of the Poison Clan. The man with the cuts on his face replied, asking if it mattered who he was or who the other guy was. Baek Ji said that the Demonic Academy was only based on strength, and that now that he'd won, he'd be in charge of Group 12. Yeo Woon focused, trying to memorize the movements. He took a deep breath. Hubang asked if he had memorized the flow. Yeo Woon replied that he remembered it clearly. Hubang laughed. The woman told him that his goal was to get enough Nigong in 7 days, 1 week. Hubang then asked if he understood. Yeo Woon could see that Hubang was tired, so he figured he should be able to endure at least that much. Yeo Woon replied that he would succeed as much as Hubang cared about him, adding that he could say some commendable things. The woman announced that today's training was over. The man reminded him to not forget the breathing method and the flow, making sure he knew it. The man said he would leave him be now, telling him to take care of himself as Yeo Woon thanked him. Yeo Woon looked down, thinking that surely he'd be able to build up Nigong in a week. At the Demonic Academy practice field, many students were training. Lee Hammond figured it was all going as expected. Turns out, those kids had become the leaders of their groups, and a lot of them had messed up faces after the night before. The reason why the instructors weren't at the dorms on the first day was to get the students to fight each other and establish ranks themselves. The man was surprised. Group 12 should have had the candidate from the Poison Clan leading it, but Cadet 18 is the leader? Looking at the students, the man could tell they had been through a brutal fight. Lee Hammond thought that anyone who dared attack a prince with a black name tag had insides and was skilled. Lee Hammond figured they should start cadet training. He said, "All right." The man on the platform called for everyone's attention. The man announced that for 7 days, every morning, they would learn basic tactics and strategies in the auditorium. Then, in the afternoon, they would train at the practice field. The instructor demanded if they understood. The academy loomed in the distance. The instructor ordered everyone to head to the auditorium, telling Group 1 to move forward. Someone called another a stupid bastard. Cheon Moo-kyung was asked how he could fall in the rankings like that. The guy with the long hair smirked, saying that the Poison Clan was nothing without poison, and that they were even worse than the lower clans. The guy looked up, clearly angry, and yelled that he would get his revenge. His eye twitched with fury. Another guy turned away, saying that the first guy was calling Baek Ji a jerk and insulting him. The angry man shouted that he would make Baek Ji regret being in the same group as him, and that he could have fun playing the leader game by himself. It was night at the Demonic Academy dorms. Cadet 3 was standing by. Cadet 3, whose name was Mado, answered the instructor, clearly flattered by the praise for his performance during the formation training. The instructor then dropped some news. Cadet 7 would have to stay in the infirmary for a couple of weeks. The instructor sighed, wondering if someone without Nigong, like Cadet 7, would even be able to catch up after being gone for so long. The instructor said he'd be visiting Cadet 7 again that day. He told the rest of them to train hard or study during their free time, then called out tomato. Suddenly, someone punched another student right in the face. The student went flying. And right after, Cheon Moo Kyum was told to be quiet. Another guy said it would only make things harder if he kept poking at that temper. The guy got angry, wondering how the hell he could be stuck in the infirmary for weeks. Ja Hyun, a loyal clan member in Cadet 80, said that if the doctor said it, it must be true. But the prince completely lost it, yelling that it was obvious the bastard was just pretending to be hurt. The prince was so angry about that damn bastard with his filthy bloodline that he kicked a pillar in half, grinding his teeth just thinking about him lying there comfortably. One of his men asked him to calm down. The guy had an idea, suggesting that instead of getting angry for no reason, they do something about it. The prince seemed intrigued by the idea. Days passed. The doctor yawned, bored out of his mind. He sighed, complaining that it had been 5 days without any patients, and he was dying of boredom. He hoped that Cheon Yeo Woon wouldn't be his last patient ever. Suddenly, the doctor screamed, wondering what the hell had just happened. An instructor, In Pyong, rushed in, carrying a cadet who'd been hurt during training with real swords. He explained that he didn't pull out the sword, not wanting to make things worse. The doctor's eyes sparkled. He told the instructor to move the cadet to a bed, happy that a patient had finally arrived. The doctor was impressed that the treatment was almost done, and said it was expected from the student of the best. He added that it was all because the instructor didn't pull out the sword. The doctor checked the kid's condition. Fortunately, the cadet hadn't injured any vitals and was very lucky. The instructor pulled back the curtains, stepping into the room. He chuckled, saying it seemed like the doctor was worried for no reason. He added that he was responsible for the students until the second test, and that 2 of them were already in the infirmary. The doctor explained that he had stitched the wound, but it was deep, so the cadet would need to be hospitalized. He seemed surprised that the cadet would need to be hospitalized. The doctor said that it wouldn't be as long as it was for Cadet 7, just 3 days should be enough. The instructor sighed. The instructor said he'd be back after the afternoon training was over and asked the doctor to take care of Cadet 23. The instructor thought to himself that it was bad timing for this to happen as soon as they started training with real swords, and that he was going to have to write a lot of apologies. Nearby, a candle burned in the darkness. The light revealed Yeo Woon sleeping in his bed. He was covered in bandages from his recent fight. The protagonist stared intensely at the knives and tools laid out before him. The hand gripped the knife tightly, and the person holding it wondered if he should start by making sure the guy couldn't walk. Nearby, a man peeked through the curtains, looking worried. He looked down at the foot he was holding and said that he was only doing this to survive. He brought the knife closer and told the person not to blame him. Suddenly, the man screamed in pain as electricity surged through his body. The axe on the ground crackled with electricity. Yeo Woon sat near the guy he just shocked and said, "Of course." He looked forward and thought to himself that it was just as he expected. The building stood silently under the moonlight. Someone gasped for air, eyes wide open. He looked up at the ceiling and wondered if he had fainted, and if so, why. He was shocked to find himself tied up on the floor. He was furious and wanted to know who had done this to him. Hubon was tied up with rope, looking shocked. Yeo Woon grinned, admitting that he was the one who did it. Hubon was completely stunned and asked how this was even possible. Yeo Woon explained that while Hubon was out cold, he tied him up and put him on the bed, and then wondered how he even passed out. Hubon thought that he was supposed to have extreme internal damage, but instead, he seemed perfectly fine. Hubon started freaking out, wondering what the voice was saying about him being bald. He looked in the mirror and screamed, realizing that he was bald. Hubon started crying, saying he couldn't feel the smooth texture of his hair anymore. He couldn't believe it, asking how he could be bald. Hubon was in complete shock, just thinking about his hair. Yeo Woon told the bald man to shut up, but then he noticed something. The guy had fainted again. Hubon was still out cold. Yeo Woon asked if he had calmed down now. Meanwhile, Hubon was still struggling against his restraints. Yeo Woon wondered what the guy was even trying to say with a gag in his mouth. Yeo Woon thought the guy was just naive when he first saw him at the entrance ceremony, but he couldn't believe this was what he was actually like. Yeo Woon stared down at the bald guy and wondered who he really was. Hubon struggled against his restraints, asking how he thought he had survived this long. With that, Yeo Woon smiled, mentioning the assassination attempts and the scumbags who had tried to poison him. At the same time, Yeo Woon asked how many people Hubon thought there were. Yeo Woon said he knew Hubon was just fooling around earlier, but did he know how much it would hurt if he got stabbed? He could even die. Yeo Woon held the knife to the bald guy's throat, demanding he talk and tell him who made him do this. The guy struggled against the gag, unable to speak. Hubon screamed in pain. Yeo Woon asked if he was alright and told him to talk. Yeo Woon repeated his question, demanding to know what he was talking about. Hubon claimed he didn't know what Yeo Woon was talking about. He pointed out that if he stabbed him in the infirmary, Yeowoon would be blamed. Hubong, tied up, reminded Yeowoon that students can't hurt others outside of training and duels at the demonic academy. Hubong figured that he wasn't gonna tell him anything easily. He said that even if Yeowoon tortured him, he wouldn't open his mouth. Hubong laughed, wondering what Yeowoon thought he could do. He probably didn't expect Hubong to be this tough. Yeowoon smiled and said that they would just have to see if he opened his mouth or not, and then paused, wondering what to do. Hubong was then gagged, unable to speak. Yeowoon told him to wait right there. Hubong noticed that where Yeowoon used to live, there weren't many things, but there were so many things here. He wondered what Yeowoon was gonna do with those needles. Yeowoon just smiled. Hubong was terrified. Yeowoon grabbed Hubong's hand tightly. Hubong was scared and noticed his hands were clenched. He couldn't believe someone with no martial arts training could be this strong. Hubong wondered why Yeowoon was trying to open his hand and what he was gonna do. Yeowoon told him it was gonna hurt a little, and then he stabbed the needle into Hubong's hand. Hubong screamed as loud as he could, but the gag in his mouth stopped the sound. Yeowoon told him to stop overreacting. Hubong kept kicking his feet, trying to get away. Hubong begged him to stop. He said he wouldn't talk even if he was tortured. Yeowoon told him to just think of it as revenge. The screams echoed through the building. Hubong was still trying to scream, but he couldn't. He was tied up and passed out. Yeowoon asked if it hurt a lot, mentioning that Hubong had fainted twice. Yeowoon wondered if they should do the other hand. Hubong could only scream again. Yeowoon asked if he finally felt like talking. He added that Hubong should have done that at the beginning. Hubong thought that this guy was crazy and that he would have died or gone crazy after enduring that. He decided he should just tell him now. It was Cheonmu Jiam, wasn't it? Hubong asked how Yeowoon knew. Yeowoon smiled, asking if he was curious as to how he knew and confirmed that he was right. Hubong explained that thanks to Cheonmu Jiam's consideration, the instructor came every day to give him lessons. Yeowoon smiled, saying that he knew in great detail what group he was in and who else was in it, but he wanted to hear it from Hubong's own mouth. Hubong, looking terrified, said Cadet 23, Yeobong. Hubong was sweating bullets, wondering who had said that this guy was nothing. Hubong thought that Yeowoon was a monster hiding his strength and acting like he didn't have any, and he couldn't even imagine how strong he would be once he got even stronger. Hubong said he got some good information, and he needed to sleep, so they should end it there, asking if Yeowoon really wanted to stop. Hubong promised he wouldn't tell anyone what had happened earlier. Hubong begged him to take his anger out on him. Yeowoon didn't say anything and just pointed his finger at the tied-up Hubong, and with a swift strike, Yeowoon knocked him out cold. Hubong was shocked, realizing that Yeowoon had used Jiamheil, a technique that neutralizes an enemy by targeting a certain spot of battle marks in the body. He was sweating, thinking he was wrong about Yeowoon. He thought that Yeowoon didn't have any Nigong. Yeowoon just stared down at him. Hubong was furious, calling him a bastard in his thoughts. He was fooling everyone. Under the moonlight, a figure ran across the rooftops. The guy moved so fast, he was practically a blur. Someone was watching all this, thinking the kid learned fast. It was the day before. One of them was helping the other focus his energy. The man couldn't believe what he was seeing. This kid, how was this even possible? In just 5 days, Yeowoon had managed to get Nigong. It normally takes at least 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month. He was way better than the man expected. This guy was the real deal. He had originally planned to help Yeowoon get Nigong in about 2 weeks, and then teach him basic techniques and breathing methods. He realized he'd have to change his plan. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Hello, teacher." Yeowoon greeted Hubong, saying that his student, Cheon Yeowoon, sends a morning greeting to his teacher. Yeowoon asked where he had put it, saying that he had it under his bed, and told him to bring it there. It was the Black Dragon Ball, made by the Demonic Academy with medicinal herbs. It's a medicinal ball given to students that pass the first test. If absorbed properly, it allows one to acquire years' worth of Nigong. However, after it's consumed, the body becomes resistant, so the effect is less effective on a second dose. Hubong held the box out, but mentioned that it still had a nasty smell. Hubong thought that if the kid took this, he should be able to get a maximum of 20 years of Nigong. Then he should be able to take care of himself. But then Hubong realized something. He asked who the kid over there was. Hubong seemed surprised. Hubong was tied up and knocked out. Yeowoon looked down and asked if he had done something to his battle marks point. The guy was saying that someone came after him after Dr. Beck left. He was shocked to hear that the guy came after him. Turns out, since yesterday, which was the 5th day since they entered the academy, training was done with real swords. The injured guy figured he was stabbed on purpose to get close to the other guy. He couldn't believe the guy dared to do such a thing in the infirmary of the Demonic Academy. Didn't he know he could be kicked out if he was discovered? It seemed like the guy had the insides to not be afraid of it. Or, the protagonist realized this could mean that someone ordered him to do this. Yeo-woon figured that Hubong knew who was behind the attack and asked him to spill the beans. Hubong said it was a scumbag from the loyal clan who was in the same group as him. He added that he had never seen any good people from that clan. Hubong continued, saying that it was a tough family with a lot of troublemakers, but he couldn't say anything against them. Yeo-woon said that it seemed like Hubong had a pretty tough life, but he was used to it. Hubong looked at Yeo-woon, thinking that it was because he said it like that it made it sad. Yeo-woon smacked Hubong to wake him up. Hubong explained that if someone used less than a year's worth of internal energy to poke his battle marks point, it would only last a couple of hours. Yeo-woon said that it would take at least 10 years of internal energy to do it properly, and demanded if he understood. Hubong said that he would keep that in mind. The guy opened a small box. Yeo-woon held the black dragon ball, asking if he should just swallow it. Cheon-Yukiam told him no, he should chew it first to make sure the medicine works better. Yeo-woon could already tell from the smell that it was going to taste awful. He ate it anyway, but the taste was so bitter that it paralyzed his tongue and made him want to throw up. Cheon-Yukiam told him that now that he had swallowed it, he should start using his breathing techniques. Cheon-Yukiam told him that his teacher would help him absorb the medicine well. Yeo-woon replied that they should start, and asked Cheon-Yukiam to take care of him. Our hero started meditating. Cheon-Yukiam explained that a substance that helps energy activity had entered his body, and it was reacting to the energy inside him. He was then asked if he would accept the absorption by speeding up the cycle. Yeo-woon didn't know what he was talking about, but figured he wanted to help, so he agreed. It would stimulate the metabolism of his body. Cheon-Yukiam was shocked, wondering how this could be happening. Cheon-Yukiam realized that the young master was born with the body of a war god, and it was absorbing all of the medicine and amplifying it. He should only be absorbing up to 80% of it. Cheon-Yukiam was relieved that he had been nervous for no reason. At the same time, the sun was setting on the buildings. Yeo-woon didn't say anything. Seob-meng asked how the Nigong felt. Seob-meng smiled, saying that Yeo-woon did well, and that he was pretty sweaty this time too. Seob-meng said that Yeo-woon was able to get 1.5 times the amount of Nigong. Yeo-woon was shocked, asking if that meant 30 years. Seob-meng said that was just a rough guess. He added that the other students would be absorbing the medicine on their own, so they might not even be able to absorb half of it. Yeo-woon was speechless. Seob-meng was super thankful. He said it was all because of Yeo-woon, and wouldn't have been possible without him. He added that he was very lucky. Yeo-woon smiled, saying that his luck must be Nano. He thanked Nano, and Nano replied that it was programmed to help him. Yeo-woon looked at the sky and realized it was getting late. He figured he had to head back right away. Seob-meng called out to Yeo-woon, asking what was wrong. The man asked his teacher if he could teach him his blade skill formation starting tomorrow. The teacher agreed, saying of course he could. He warned that the student wouldn't have a lot of time, so he better be ready. The student replied that he would be. The scene showed a view of the city. Lee Ham laughed, saying it was a very nice morning and that someone seemed to be in a good mood. The man smiled, saying that it was all thanks to Jaehyun, and thanked the prince. He laughed, saying that the other guy must be struggling a lot since his limbs were broken. He laughed again, saying he'd been wanting the other guy to get on the floor and crawl like a bug, adding that it even made his skin itch. Lee Hamming just burst out laughing. He pointed at Hubong and asked where his hair had gone overnight, still laughing. Hubong was mad, but he couldn't yell because of the guy next to him. Lee Hamming apologized, saying he laughed too much and was tearing up, but then said it was too late to cover for Hubong. Lee Hamming just stood there, looking down at the guy in the bed. Yeo-woon was just lying there thinking. The guy was thinking that something must have happened overnight. The man decided to not pay attention to it. He remembered that the Mado House doctor should only focus on treatment, and not ask questions. 2 days later, at the Mado House's Group 8 quarters, the man thought it was interesting. Shouldn't he have been kicked out of the group? The guy explained that he wanted to cut the 7th his tendons, but the doctor stayed by Cheon Yeo-woon all night because of his bad wounds. The man couldn't believe it. He asked if the doctor didn't even sleep and if this was the excuse he was getting. The guy nervously explained to the prince that he moved at night like he was ordered, but the doctor woke up too. The prince's eyes narrowed with anger. The prince yelled, asking how bright a doctor's ear could be. The man got kicked right into the ground. The prince was furious and called the man a piece of trash for failing such a simple task. The man told the prince to wait a moment and asked what was wrong. The prince asked if the man knew the name of the doctor in the clinic. The man, lying on the ground, said that he heard the doctor's name was Baekjong Myong. The prince repeated the doctor's name, Baekjong Myong, asking if the man on the ground knew him. The bald man realized that the doctor was probably a student of Dr. Baekjong Woo. He explained that Baekjong Woo used to be part of the Poison Clan, but he focused on medicine and became the Lord's personal doctor. He was even ranked in the top 30 of the demonic cult. The bald man said that if their doctor was Baekjong Woo's student, his martial arts skills might be amazing. The prince got angry, saying that sending the other man was a waste, and then kicked him. The man was crying, realizing he wouldn't get any support for his clan. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The guy with long hair smirked, asking Hyobang if he would do something for him. The smirking man told Hyobang not to worry, because he was the heir of the Spring clan. The injured man on the ground told them to keep hitting him. He wanted to see if they could keep it up when that guy arrived. The man was still on the ground, defeated. The man demanded to know why the bald guy was wearing that bandana. The bald guy looked shocked. The man kept kicking him, asking if he thought shaving his head and pretending to feel sorry would make things okay. He was not happy. The other guys thought things had calmed down for a bit, but now the quarters were getting noisy again. One of the men said he felt like trash and told Jia Hyun they should leave. As they walked away, he cursed. Someone was really angry and shouted that Cheon Mu Kyum and Cheon Yeo Woon could all go die. Meanwhile, someone wondered if Dr. Beck could use martial arts too, but the doctor said he only knew medicine. Days later, at 6 a.m., the model house clinic was empty. Bare feet stepped onto the floor. The man stared at his hands deep in thought. Someone stepped forward, putting all their strength into the move. The guy moved like a blur, his sword cutting through the air. The man watched him, thinking that the student was a genius. He thought that he had only shown the butterfly shadow step a few times and fixed his posture these past few days, but his movements were stable and natural. The man figured that if he kept training, he would have no problem operating formation. Lee Hamming told the student that next was movement. The student started moving his hands, trying to get a feel for it. Thanks to the nanomachine scanning Lee Hamming's posture, he could perfectly copy it, but that would make him suspicious, so he decided to go just a bit slower. The student practiced the movement, trying to make it his own. Lee Hamming explained that the grafting martial technique has 24 movements, and that 3 basic movements create 1 formation, making up to 8 formations. Lee Hamming thought that it took too much time to teach him the basics, so he couldn't teach him the connections. Lee Hamming figured that if he had 1 or 2 months more with him, the student would have been able to learn everything completely, but 1 week is too short. Lee Hamming told the student, "That's it. You memorized it well." The student replied that Lee Hamming was flattering him. The teacher handed him a piece of paper, asking what it was. Lee Hamming explained that it was the butterfly dance and Nigong operation technique. He wanted to teach it himself, but since it was the last day, he figured that the young master would be able to learn the basics easily. Lee Hamming warned him that he'd check on him later, so he better not slack off and memorize it properly. The student thanked him, promising not to fail him. Lee Hamming simply replied that he shouldn't. Lee Hamming then picked up a stick and started practicing the moves. Lee Hamming presented his wild dance blade. He told the young master to try wielding it. Yeo Woon grabbed it and said it felt surprisingly light. Yeo Woon noticed that normal swords weighed around 2-3 guns, but this wild dance blade was only around 1.5. He wondered if it was because of the butterfly dance. Lee Hamming smiled, impressed by the young master's quick thinking. Yeo Woon checked the blade and noticed how sharp it was. He thought Dr. Beck would be annoyed if he saw this. Lee Hamming smiled, explaining that even though the blade was light and had a narrow range, it was made with cold iron. The sharpness and durability gave the sword its title. Yeo Woon told him to step back so he could show him what he wanted to see. Lee Hamming told him to watch closely, showing him his butterfly technique. Then, Yeo Woon activated his nanomachines. The nanomachines got ready to Lee Hamming's technique, as requested by Yeo Woon. The sun rose over the demonic cult, painting the sky with light. Yeo Woon ran across the rooftops. One of the figures on the roof said that the right guardian was finally leaving, and that the other did well pretending not to know. Lee Hamming asked how he could go against his orders. He was happy he didn't have to watch him coming in and out of his mouse hole. The man suggested that they should reassign guards to the second-floor hall since they would have had plenty of rest. Lee Hamming said he was leaving, but Lee Hamming asked what was the reason for his concern for the 7th prince. The other man said it was because that was fair. Lee Hamming chuckled, asking if he was saying that the 7th prince had a chance because he was of royal battle marks. The man replied that he shouldn't question this guy. The man figured that, as expected of the Wind King, you never knew where he went. If he decided to run away, it'd be impossible to catch him. Anyway, Lee Hamming wondered if 10 days would really make everything fair. The man looked at something with a puzzled expression. The man noticed that Yeo Woon was still sleeping, even though he was always up when he came for work, and wondered what was up. The man thought this was the last time Yeo Woon could rest peacefully like this. Once he was released, he'd go through a lot. Yeo Woon was told to sleep a little more. The nanomachines then started to work on his muscles to simulate the butterfly technique's starting expression, with 80% completion to data goal, and changed to veins with 75% completion. The nanomachine said there was 1 hour left until 100% completion. An hour later, the guy was still sleeping at the table. Suddenly, the guy woke up and started throwing up everywhere. He was confused, asking what was happening. Yeo Woon kept on vomiting. The man asked why he was suddenly vomiting and shivering so much. wondering if he was okay. The man told Yeo-woon to just let it all out. The man told Yeo-woon to lie down and rest since it looked like he had calmed down a bit. His body was still shaking. The man was confused, wondering how someone who had been lying down the whole time could have a pulse like that. His pulse was running as if the body was completely overworked, but the body's response to the body evolution had stabilized. Yeo-woon was still breathing heavily. The man was confused. He couldn't believe how stable Yeo-woon had suddenly become. The man admitted he'd never heard of something like this from his teacher. The man shrugged it off, deciding to just leave Yeo-woon to sleep. It was almost lunchtime, so he figured he'd just go eat. But Yeo-woon's eyes snapped open. Someone sat on the floor, meditating. The man opened his hand, ready to start training. Yeo-woon clenched his fist, feeling the power. He could feel the strength in his hands, so different from just 6 hours ago. He figured he now knew how much training the teacher went through. If Lee Hamung somehow found out that he had earned this body in just 6 hours, he'd be scared, right? Yeo-woon was really thinking about how scared Lee Hamung would be. The young master focused his energy. Yeo-woon unleashed all that power, sending waves of blue energy blasting outwards. Yeo-woon unleashed all that power, sending waves of blue energy blasting outwards. The student was shocked by the show of power. He thought it was amazing that he could create that much pressure without even using Nigong. Yeo-woon asked the nanomachines if they had scanned everything, and they confirmed that they had. Lee Hamung turned to the student and asked if he watched properly. The student confirmed that he did. Lee Hamung said it was a shame, and that he should have taught him formations properly, but today was the end. Lee Hamung told him that if it was him, he'd be able to learn the butterfly dance just by watching. He thanked him for everything and told him to keep at it. Yeo-woon replied to the teacher, saying that it'll be very hard once he returns to the model house. Lee Hamung told the student not to lose. Yeo-woon realized that there was at least one person who cared about him. He decided he should live up to his expectations. Yeo-woon asked the nanomachines if they were done analyzing the scan move, and they confirmed it was completed. The nanomachines told him that to use the move, his muscles and veins needed to change a lot, and it would take about 6 hours. Yeo-woon was shocked and asked why it would take so long. He started practicing the move, trying to get it right. He put more power into the move, trying to speed up the process. Yeo-woon kept practicing, putting his whole body into it. He was happy because he only used the first formation, and it was the same as his teacher's. Yeo-woon prepared to move on to the second formation. Suddenly, he stopped. He could hear someone walking in the hallway. Yeo-woon wondered if he had always been this sensitive. Had his senses become sharper as his body changed? He realized that all preparations were now complete, which was great. Yeo-woon turned around to see a man standing behind him. Yeo-woon told the man he was ready to be discharged, asking if he knew what was complete, and when he had woken up. He realized the presence he had felt in the hallway was Dr. Beck. Yeo-woon placed his hand over the emblem on his chest. Dr. Beck sighed, saying he didn't even have any other patients, and wondered what he was going to do when Yeo-woon left. Yeo-woon said there would be more patients soon, but then thought to himself that it was better if there weren't any. Dr. Beck thanked him for his time, saying he'd be praying for him. Then the door shut. Now Dr. Beck didn't have anything to do, so he wondered if he should just sleep. Meanwhile, Yeo-woon stood at the door, ready to leave. Yeo-woon thought that if the doctor didn't pretend not to know that the right guardian taught him martial arts, it would have been uncomfortable the whole time he was in the clinic. Yeo-woon promised to never forget the doctor's kindness. He added that he would definitely send all the patients the doctor wanted. The doctor's students got goosebumps, wondering what was going on. It was afternoon at the model house, and group training was about to start. Suddenly, some of the guys noticed someone. They realized it was another clan heir in their group, and it had been 2 weeks since they last saw him. The guy smirked, saying that the wait was finally over. Yeo-woon walked forward, and someone called him a peasant. Turning around, Yeo-woon was greeted by someone who asked if he was okay now, calling him leader. Yeo-woon smirked, saying that he was completely cured, which was fortunate. The guy speaking reminded him that he had explained it in theory, but asked if he remembered his position, which Yeo-woon confirmed. He told him to go that way with these weapons. The two guys started walking, carrying the shield and spear with them. The guy asked if he had only come now because he was scared. Cheon-mu-jeom insulted the other guy, calling him dirty. Cheon-mu-jeom was furious. Cheon-mu-jeom yelled, asking how that scumbag could ignore him. Yeo-woon smirked, telling Cheon-mu-jeom not to get too excited yet. Yeo-woon thought that he would show him what's soon enough. The instructor announced that they would start practical training with real swords, so everyone needed to pay attention to their spacing. He warned them that if the same accident happened again, he would kick them out of the academy. The instructor yelled, asking if they understood. A red flag was raised, and right after that, the students started moving. Turns out, even though Cheon-mu-jeom's personality is pretty bad, he controls his teammates well, like a clan leader should. The problem, though, is Cheon Yeo-woon. He put him in the position with the least movement on purpose, hoping he wouldn't screw things up. But then, he was surprised because the boy was actually doing better than he thought. He wondered if he could keep up with the others and if he was quick-witted. The order came to line up their shields properly, and keep their posture, and line up straight. They were doing well, but they couldn't move until they got the command. Minutes later, someone messed up, and the instructor yelled at them for moving when they weren't supposed to. He kept shouting, asking if they thought they could beat the other groups in the second test if they couldn't even do this right. He told them to pay attention. The man wondered how the guys who had been training this whole time could be so bad. He noticed that Cheon Yeo-woon was perfectly fine and hadn't moved at all. He wondered if he was really the same guy who had been lying down in the clinic the whole time. The man decided he needed to reassess Cheon Yeo-woon and ordered them to change formation. The instructor kept yelling at them to surround the enemy in a semicircle. He then ordered them to move forward half a step, praising them as they took big steps. One of the students followed the instructions, focused on the task. The instructor got angry, wondering why Cheon Yeo-woon wasn't making any mistakes. He thought that there was no way he would just watch the peasants succeed. Ja-hyun was among the soldiers. The soldier told them to just nod if they could hear him. The instructor told the third lineup to do as he said. One of the soldiers replied that he understood. The instructor immediately ordered them to change the lineup. The instructor ordered the soldiers to quickly stack the shields 3 levels high. Yeo-woon thought it shouldn't be too hard, especially since the Nano had already imported the simulation video for them. He then told them that once the shields were stacked, they should stick their swords out through the holes. Yeo-woon stressed that they needed to keep their speed up, even if they were being careful. One of the instructors complained that he could see someone's behind completely, and wondered what was going on. The bald man stood over Yeo-woon, declaring that peasant battle marks should stain the ground. At the same time, the other soldiers continued stacking their shields. Meanwhile, Yeo-woon's eyes narrowed. The bald man realized that Yeo-woon had noticed his attack. The bald man figured he was just going to use a little bit of inner power since Yeo-woon didn't know martial arts, but he decided to use all his power. Yeo-woon blocked the sword with his shield. Because of the force, Yeo-woon was sent flying high into the air from the shield wall. Yeo-woon was shocked that he had been rebounded. Huban was lying on the ground. Huban was confused and wondered if he had been catapulted off because the other guy's inner power was much stronger than his. Huban looked up, still trying to understand what just happened. Yeo-woon saw that it was the same guy from before and asked what he was doing back here. Huban, who was still on the ground, yelled out, calling him leader. And immediately, a foot landed on Huban's face. Huban was still feeling the pain in his ankle. The men with shields were sweating, knowing they were in trouble. Yeo-woon was smiling like a boss. The guy looked angry, asking how a peasant dared to laugh at him. Yeo-woon saw Huban grinding his teeth and asked if he couldn't come to his senses. Huban tried to say something about his butt. Yeo-woon looked furious, saying that this kid was completely gone, and then punched him hard. Yeo-woon asked if he was also the one who stabbed number 23 in the back last time. Yeo-woon told him that he wouldn't be having any free time for the next 4 days and that until bedtime, he would be receiving hell's training with his leader. The guy looked angry, saying that this piece of trash was still making excuses. The guys were saying that he deserved it, acting all high and mighty with Cheon Mugun backing him. Someone was clenching their teeth in anger. The guy looked furious. Someone shouted the name Cheon Yeo-woon. The guy told him that he wouldn't have any free time for the next 4 days, and he would be receiving hell's training with their leader. The guy yelled, saying that the trash was still making excuses. Someone noticed that Cheon Yeo-woon's power was stronger than he thought. He wondered if the right guardian taught him, but it was still weird. Lee Hammond thought that the bald guy should have around 30 years of training worth of power since he took the medicine ball. So, he wondered if Cheon Yeo-woon's power exceeded that. Cheon Mukiam thought there was no way that the drunkard Siab Meng taught him properly. The guy wondered if Cheon Yeo-woon had a body that could naturally take in the full power of the medicine ball. Lee Hammond thought that was the only way to explain it. He figured that even if he was a half battle marks, he was still the son of a tiger. Someone noticed the standoff between 2 possible heirs in the same group and thought things were about to get interesting. The scene changed to the Grand Armament Great Hall. Everyone started eating at Motto. The food looked really good. Our hero thought the chicken marinated in soy sauce was delicious. He was happy to finally be eating something other than white porridge after 2 weeks. Anyway, he wondered if Cheon Mu Jiam was going to keep glaring at him during the entire meal. He decided to just enjoy the food for now. Yeo-woon said he didn't know why they hated him so much, but he couldn't forgive the 6th clan's actions either. He added that they wouldn't know what it felt like to watch their mother die without being able to do anything. He would trample over all of them from now on. At that moment, an announcement rang out, declaring that mealtime was over and Friday's schedules were wrapped up. Everyone except number 80 was dismissed. The man shouted for everyone to leave. Then he told number 80 to come with him. Yeo-woon smirked, already planning his next move. He started walking towards the building where the trainees were staying. As he walked, he thought that Group 8's quarters were in room 8 on the first floor, which was easy to remember. Suddenly, someone shouted at him, asking where he thought he was going without permission. It was Baki, leaning against the wall with a confident smirk. Baki watched Yeo Woon walk by and thought that the guy didn't disappoint his expectations. Another guy wondered if he wanted to act like a master wherever he went. The crowd whispered that it was the Spring Clan's heir, and asked who the guy in front of him was, before answering that it was the 7th heir from all the rumors, and that this should be fun. A woman wondered if it was Cheon Mu GM and Cheon Yeo Woon. Someone else noted that many had gathered, and asked if they should start. Cheon Yeo Woon walked forward, passing by a group of people. One of the guys spat out that he had peasant battle marks. Yeo Woon asked if it was easy to just lie on a bed in the clinic. The other guy asked if he was annoyed, and if that peasant battle marks was insulting the Lord. The man looked surprised and asked what he meant. The man asked if calling him peasant battle marks was insulting the Lord, but he didn't understand what was going on. Yeo Woon asked if his status was so high that he could insult the Lord, who was like a god to them. The man looked around at the crowd and stammered, asking when he had ever done that. The man was furious that he was supposed to crush Yeo Woon, but instead he was the one receiving that treatment. Woman smirked, thinking that the Spring Clan were really stupid. The man watched the scene unfold. Cheon Kyung Woon thought the guy was making a big deal out of nothing and called him a dull scumbag. Suddenly, someone got punched hard. The guy was furious, and said that he was gonna crush that arrogant mouth. And then he got punched again. Yeo Woon was ready to beat someone else up. Yeo Woon asked what the guy was trying to say about crushing Kwek. The guy coughed up battle marks. The guy was furious that a peasant dared to do that. Then a blast of energy came out of nowhere. Yeo Woon used Spring Clan's fist technique. The guy swung his sword, but Yeo Woon kicked him off the ground and the guy shouted that Yeo Woon was a bastard. Yeo Woon jumped away and someone shouted asking if he was running. The guy was surprised and asked how Yeo Woon could be weightless, calling him a peasant bastard. The other guys started yelling at their teammate to get that trash. Yeo Woon didn't wait around. He just ran. The guy was pissed that Yeo Woon punched him and ran away. He thought that if he let him go, he wouldn't be considered a man. He chased after him through the forest. The others were surprised at how fast Yeo Woon was. The guy chasing Yeo Woon realized something was weird. It was like he was running just fast enough for them not to catch up. The man started yelling at the others for hesitating and called them slow. He said he'd go by himself. The guy yelled that he'd catch Cheon Yeo Woon, crush his face, and destroy all the bones in his body. Yeo Woon kept running through the forest, moving fast. Our hero suddenly stopped and crouched down, ready to fight. The guy yelled, calling Yeo Woon a f-tard and asking if he was done running. Yeo Woon smirked and asked if he was talking about running. The man stepped forward, saying it was a joke, but then he looked shocked. At the same time, Yeo Woon grinned, thinking there was no reason to show the others yet. Yeo Woon attacked the man with a crazy amount of power. The man was shocked by the crazy power. Yeo Woon didn't stop there. He kept attacking with everything he had. The man struggled to block, saying that even though he used the 7-star defensive skill, he was still getting pushed back. He realized that the young master's defensive skills were strong. He looked at Yeo Woon suspiciously. Yeo Woon smiled and asked how he knew martial arts. The man thought about it, and realized that Yeo Woon's movements were fast. He remembered that the young master had no inner power in the first test, and wondered what was happening. Yeo Woon smirked, happy that the man was getting nervous, just as he expected. The man kept up his attacks with everything he had. Suddenly, one of the man's teammates shouted a warning about their prince. Yeo Woon used the butterfly dance's second formation, with light butterfly circular movements. The young master's eyes widened in shock as he tried to understand what was happening. The man couldn't believe it. He shouted out, wondering how Yeo Woon avoided his attack. Turns out, Yeo Woon was already preparing his next move. Yeo Woon struck with immense power. Because of that, the man's face contorted in pain. The man didn't give up and used the Spring Clan's fist technique's second formation to launch a continuous batting fist attack. The unnamed man's eyes were full of anger. At the same time, he kept attacking with his fist. The man kept hitting him with everything he had, trying to take down the young master. The attacks were so strong that Yeo Woon was sent flying back. The man was still unable to match Yeo Woon's skills. He thought that Yeo Woon's power must have been higher than the other students even before he joined. He figured that Yeo Woon's power must be even higher since he took the magic ball, but he was still determined to stand his ground. The unnamed man knew that he needed to attack without giving the young master time to react. He moved so fast that the air around him blurred. The man was shocked to see an afterimage. He couldn't believe the young master could use that kind of martial arts. Yeo Woon moved with incredible speed. The young master attacked with a spinning strike, pushing the unnamed man back. The unnamed man was shocked by the young master's speed and power. Yeo Woon didn't give him a chance to recover. The force of the blows sent the man flying. Yeo Woon stood over the fallen man, who was coughing up battle marks. He realized that the young master was good with formations, but he had no idea how to respond to the enemy's attacks. The guy was down, realizing he had been so focused on the punches that he didn't see the kick coming. He was surprised that the young master used skills that didn't suit him, but he could tell that he was just making it up as he went. Cheon smirked, saying that it was exactly as he expected. He was just trying to copy others without knowing his own limits. The man wondered if Cheon realized that he had only learned this technique with 2 formations, and that he didn't have enough actual experience. He realized that he had underestimated Cheon. Who knew experience would make such a big difference? The man balled his fist, admitting he didn't know how the young master had learned martial arts. He used the Spring Clan's fist technique, 5th formation, instant attack, Spring's Roar, but he said he would ask questions later. The young master wondered what to do and what formation he needed to use. Suddenly, his system detected danger from an external force. The system started increasing eye functions in response to the danger, operating defense mode through battle tutorial. So, the system showed him exactly where to hit. The young master punched with everything he had, and immediately, the guy's face exploded from the force. Woon kept attacking, not giving the man a chance to breathe. The man's face was getting destroyed. The protagonist didn't stop, keeping the pressure on. The man couldn't believe it. He asked how this could not be a technique. Woon looked just as confused. He wondered what was happening. The system then explained that it was using the optional built-in self-defense martial arts, battle tutorial type defense style, boxing. The system continued, saying this indicated independent teaching and that they had created results through analysis of the opponent's movements for every 0.01 seconds. Woon didn't know what that meant, but he asked if it was saying this was boxing. He then asked if it was possible to use the butterfly dance instead of boxing. The system asked if he would accept, and Woon agreed immediately. Man was furious, accusing Woon of learning fist techniques and hiding a card up his sleeve. But the man declared that it wouldn't work anymore and charged forward. The system announced it was changing the defense mode from boxing to butterfly dance. Woon realized he could now see where the man would attack. Woon was just too fast for him, dodging every attack. The man was furious. He couldn't believe the young master had avoided all his attacks. He screamed, "This scumbag! He avoided all of my hits?" But Woon didn't care. He launched a savage counterattack. The man was getting pummeled, battle marks splattering everywhere. Now he was crying, tears streaming down his face as he realized he was completely outmatched. The man, covered in battle marks, told GM to do his best. He continued, saying that if he did well, his father would leave that trash and come back to her. The woman put her hand on the child's head, telling him that he needed to win everything. The child looked up at his mother and said, "Yes, mother." She yelled that it was because he couldn't do it right. The woman cried, saying it was all because he was bad at everything and because that dirty woman showed up. She kept crying, saying it wasn't her fault and that he couldn't do anything right. The woman cried even harder as she was choked, saying it was all because he was a mistake. He remembered that memory and was not happy about it. Woon looked to the side, wondering if he had. The man was bleeding and could not believe it, asking if he could actually lose. He tried to stand his ground. The man shouted that he would never lose to a peasant bastard like Woon. Woon didn't care and punched him in the face. Our hero hit him again with a devastating blow. The man coughed up battle marks, completely defeated. The leaves fell from the trees in the forest. Woon stood over the fallen man, looking down at him. The man said he couldn't believe he was losing to a peasant bastard like Woon. The man was lying on the ground, unable to believe what had happened. The man on the ground heard Woon tell him that he brought all of this on himself. The guys watching couldn't believe that Woon beat Cheon Gun, someone they couldn't even take down together. They whispered to each other, saying that Woon had no inner power just 10 days ago, and wondered what they should do. Woon turned around and asked if they wanted to try him too, and then ordered them to take the defeated guy away. The defeated man was being dragged away as he asked if the prince was alright, saying that they would help him. He thought to himself that if he had more authority, everyone would obey him like that. He yelled at them to let go of him, saying he would walk by himself, but they kept calling him prince. The guy that Woon defeated was still on the ground, complaining that Woon didn't finish him off properly. He went on, saying that if the second test wasn't a group task, he would have cracked Woon's head open, calling him a peasant. Woon warned that he would really do it if he kept coming at him like that. The other guy yelled back, telling him to do it, even though he couldn't even get up by himself. The guy kept yelling insults as he was being carried away, but said he was leaving. He was still mad about what happened. The night was dark, and the forest was quiet, but strange symbols floated in the air. Woon realized that last fight was dangerous, and that he would have lost if it wasn't for the nanomachine. Even though he learned martial arts faster than anyone, he couldn't just ignore experience. He knew he couldn't become like his teacher just because he had mastered the butterfly dance. Woon knew that if he wanted to reach a higher status, he needed internal energy and experience. But the sixth clan wouldn't leave him alone while he was trying to build on it. The protagonist decided that he needed to learn exactly how to use what he could right now. The nanomachine responded to Yeowon's thoughts, confirming that it was checking the user's records. The nanomachine announced that he had only used 3% of all of its functions, which made Yeowon wonder what that meant. The nanomachine corrected itself, stating that he had used 3/100 of its functions, and that he hadn't exceeded 3/10 of the nanomachine's functions according to the records. Yeowon realized that there must be more functions that he could make use of. Yeowon asked Nano to tell him in detail about all the functions it could perform, and he accepted the transfer of the 7th generation nanomachine's function manual to his brain. The nanomachine asked if Yeowon would like to add the English language to help him understand the manual, mentioning that it was the weird language he sometimes spoke in. Yeowon agreed. The nanomachine confirmed that it would transfer the 7th generation nanomachine's manual, along with the English language, to his brain. The information flooded into Yeowon's brain. The information transfer finished. Yeowon felt a little dizzy from all the new knowledge, but at least he didn't feel like throwing up. Now that he had the manual, Yeowon immediately started searching for new functions. Yeowon was staring at the interfaces floating in front of him, totally shocked. He couldn't believe it. He wondered if he could really do all of this stuff. Then he saw something about repetitive battles in augmented reality. If he could do that, he could get all the practice he needed. Yeowon wondered if he could run a simulation with Cheonmu GM. Turns out there wasn't enough information to make a perfect copy, but the nanomachine could make a simulation based on their last fight. Yeowon decided to try it out right away. Yeowon reached out and touched the ground. He wondered if this place would be good enough. Turns out, nobody was around. The simulation avatar started to activate right in front of him. Yeowon was amazed. Yeowon realized that this was an avatar in augmented reality. The system asked if only he could see the avatar, and then said that the simulation settings were being changed, and that he needed to set the avatar's impact percentage on the user. The system then explained that the impact percentage was the amount of impact he would receive from the avatar's attacks. It told him to set it to 100 for the same amount of impact as normal, or lower if he wanted less. Yeowon wondered how much it would hurt anyway, and then decided to set the impact to 100%. The system then said that the simulation would be started with 100% impact. The avatar immediately trash-talked him, calling him peasant battle marks and telling him to come at him. Yeowon wondered why this stupidity was part of the simulation, as the avatar taunted him, asking if he was scared. Yeowon was thrilled that he couldn't crack the avatar's head open earlier because of the test, but it didn't matter anymore since it was just an avatar. The avatar then taunted him, saying that it would come to him if he didn't come to it. The screen showed the Spring Clan fist techniques. Spring's roar formation. Yeowon was shocked to see that the simulation was exactly the same as the real thing. Yeowon didn't waste any time and immediately attacked with the Spring's roar formation. The avatar's face was being scanned and analyzed. The avatar mocked Yeowon, asking if he really thought that kind of sloppy attack would work on him. But Yeowon didn't listen and kept attacking with the Spring's roar formation. The avatar was suddenly shocked, wondering why he could feel pain. The nanomachine had given him the same amount of pain that he felt earlier using the information that was collected. The avatar asked if he wanted to change the impact percentage, but said it was fine and they would continue like this. The avatar taunted Yeowon, telling him to come at him. Yeowon was getting annoyed. The avatar was about to strike, and Yeowon shouted his name. It was now night time. Yeowon was lying on the ground, breathing heavily. He asked the nanomachine what time it was. Yeowon was pissed because he had to fight that avatar 15 times before he finally won. The first fight ended in only 5 formations, and he couldn't even defend himself properly, so he just used his body. Yeowon realized that if he fought with Cheonmu GM properly, he wouldn't even get close and would just lose right away. The nanomachine told him that his skills would increase with experience and training, and the nanomachine added that the frequency of him using formations of the butterfly dance was increasing. Yeowon was pissed that he lost to a guy who was just using the same 3 formations and basic moves over and over. He grinned, saying that Cheonmu GM's avatar would be nothing to him in 7 days. He was sure that the next time, he would completely destroy that avatar. The scene changed to the Mado House student quarters. Yeowon was standing in the room, wondering which bed was his. The students were shocked and whispered to each other as Yeowon entered the room. Yeowon thought to himself that he just beat a clan heir, and now they were clearing the path for him. Suddenly, one of the students called him Prince. The guy told him that his bed was this way, and Yeowon was surprised. The other students wondered why he was acting like that. The guy asked Yeowon why he was acting so different. The man said he had already been abandoned by Cheonmu GM, so he had nothing left to lose. He figured he was probably gonna die anyway. He figured he might as well take a gamble. The man, Cadet Hyobong, declared that he wished to serve Prince Cheon Yeowon as his master. Hyobong was basically shouting, asking if he was really offering loyalty to the 7th prince, who didn't have any power. Yeowon looked at him, asking if he really wanted to serve him as his master. Hyeobong said he still felt bad about what happened before. He begged Yeowon to take him in as a servant, and let him serve him as much as he could. Yeowon thought to himself that this guy wanted to be his servant, even though he's always had a hard time trusting others. Hyeobong kept begging. Yeowon was thinking that someone actually wanted to become his servant, even without being forced to become his guard by the Lord's orders. The protagonist smiled faintly, looking at Hyeobong. Hyeobong was super grateful and said he would do his absolute best. Suddenly, someone interrupted, saying he had only left for a little while and this stupid thing was already happening. The guy yelled at Hyeobong, asking who he was showing his loyalty to. Hyeobong was thinking that Cheonmu GM and Jaehyun were scary, but he couldn't show his fear. Hyeobong yelled, asking who the guy was to call someone else's servant an insect. Yeowon said that the guy was the insect for kissing up to someone's butt. Hyeobong stammered, asking what Yeowon had just said. Yeowon smirked, asking why he was stuttering. The guy was furious, asking if they were scared and calling them names. He charged forward, calling them a peasant scumbag. But Yeowon didn't even flinch. He blasted the guy with a powerful strike. The force sent him flying backwards while everyone else watched in shock. Yeowon smirked, thinking that the guy was nothing compared to the avatar he had fought. The guy on the ground was gasping for air. Hyeobong was thinking that he had made the right choice. Yeowon turned to him and asked if he wanted another go. Cheonmu GM scoffed, telling him to enjoy it while he could, because nothing had changed just because he had a servant. The crowd couldn't believe it. Cheonmu GM actually walked away from the fight. The crowd whispered, not sure if they should be happy or not, but they knew that the Spring Clan's authority wasn't going anywhere. But maybe, just maybe. Yeowon stood there, looking like he was ready to face whatever came next. He'd bring a new change to the Demonic Academy. A week later, it was time for the group type second test, the Motto House Grand Armament. The instructor shouted that he had taught them everything they needed to know, and now they were responsible for how they performed. The instructor yelled, wanting to make sure everyone understood what motto meant. He explained that before they started, they would draw lots to decide who would fight who. Groups 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and 9 to 12 would draw lots among themselves. Lee Hammond ordered the group leaders from groups 1 to 4 to come forward. Someone noticed that the group leaders for groups 2 and 3 had changed. Turns out, Cheon Mu-yun from the Dark Clan was still the group leader for group 1. Someone pointed out that Cadet 72 had been in group 4 before, right? They were still unsure though. Lee Hammond smirked, wondering if there were just 2 people. Then, someone reached into the box to draw the lots. Down below, the group leaders watched the process. The results were in. Match 1 would be Group 1 versus Group 3, and Match 2 would be Group 2 versus Group 4. The crowd cheered for their group leader. Lee Hammond called out for the leaders of Groups 5 through 8 to come forward. The crowd was shocked. Turns out, 2 people had changed this time as well, and they were wondering if Group 8 was for real. Lee Hammond just smirked at the situation. Yeowon started walking forward. The crowd noticed him, and were surprised. Cheon Mu-kyum was furious, saying he had warned him so many times, calling Cheon Mu-GM an idiot. Turns out, this was after the end of training last afternoon. At the same time, Cheon Mu-kyum was watching them, noticing they were still doing group training. He thought they were idiots, and realized they were just showing off their strategies, which was pitiful. Because of that, Cheon Mu-kyum decided there was nothing more to watch, and that he would go do some martial arts training. He was really mad at Cheon Mu-GM. A woman with red hair smiled. Suddenly, a man with brown hair looked surprised, wondering who it was. The woman walked away, ignoring him completely. The woman stopped and turned around to face him. The man looked angry and demanded to know what she was doing. The woman with red hair demanded to know why he was ignoring her after she called for him, asking what he wanted her to say. The woman looked annoyed and said she had called him after thinking about it a lot, and he was treating her like that. The woman turned away, telling him not to talk to her because he said the Spring Clan guys were idiots. The woman said he was annoying and that the Spring Clan guys were narrow-minded too. She told him to listen well because she was going to say it quickly. Suddenly, the man grabbed her arm, stopping her from leaving. The girl asked if he had hurt himself. She then pointed to her bandaged hands, clarifying that the injury was from yesterday. She repeated the word yesterday. The girl explained that someone ambushed her while she was training alone last night. The girl with the bandaged hands started to explain that when she was training by herself last night, someone ambushed her. The man seemed surprised and asked which brave scumbag would do that. The girl said that she couldn't tell who it was because they were wearing a mask. The man asked if she wasn't attacked because she was being careless, mask or not. The girl got angry and told him not to make light of her words. She said she was never careless around that masked scumbag. The red-haired woman told the man to be careful since she got hurt. She added that there was a good chance they would go after him next. The man looked confused and asked what that had to do with them being in the same competition group. The red-haired woman reminded him that they would be split into groups of 4, and then they would draw lots to decide who they would fight. The man asked what that had to do with anything. The red-haired woman asked why they would split them into groups of 4 when they could just have everyone fight each other. The man looked even more confused and said he didn't understand what she was trying to say. The red-haired woman was getting frustrated, explaining that the teams knew exactly who they would be fighting. The man realized that they announced it in advance on purpose. The red-haired woman confirmed that they wanted the team leaders targeted, because if the leader was gone, it would mess up the team's formation. The red-haired woman told him to watch out since the test was tomorrow, and warned him not to go off to train by himself. She didn't want to hear any embarrassing news about a clan heir getting kicked out without even passing the second test. Yahello kept practicing his martial arts. He thought that the weakest of them all was warning him and that she was overstepping her boundaries. It still wasn't something he should just overlook though. It made him feel like trash, so he wondered if he should at least take Jahyun along. Meanwhile, the sun started to go down, painting the mountains in shadows. Someone told the master that it had become late in the evening. Yeowon asked Nano what percentage of matches he'd won against Cheonmu Jiam's avatar. It was around 60%. He said he still had a lot to go, and that he'd said he'd be able to beat it easily within a week, but he'd only beaten him 60% of the time. Nano told him that his practical ability and the proficiency of his formations had become a lot higher after 106 training sessions. It estimated that he would be able to achieve his wish in the next few days. Yeowon asked if it was consoling him. Nano replied that it was an estimation from the analysis, which Yeowon thought was stiff. He said he should start making his way back to the quarters. Yeowon looked around, seemingly confused. He started to walk. Suddenly Yeowon heard the sound of fighting nearby. Someone screamed in pain. He immediately ran towards the location. Someone wondered who was fighting because it was too dark to see. It looked like someone was on the ground too. Nano activated night vision mode, so Yeowon could see what was happening. The night vision kicked in, and Yeowon saw Cheonmu Jiam lying on the ground, and he realized that Cheonmu Jiam had been attacked by someone wearing a mask. Cheonmu Jiam was seriously injured, clutching his chest in pain. The masked man didn't give him a chance to recover, unleashing another attack. The masked man's power was overwhelming, sending Cheonmu Jiam flying. Yeowon realized that the masked guy's moves were not to be taken lightly. He wondered who it could be. He was getting angry. The masked man was kicking with incredible force. Yeowon screamed as he felt the power. The masked man was ready to attack again. The masked man kept attacking, not giving Yeowon a chance to recover. Someone thought to himself that he didn't want to help Cheonmu Jiam, but he couldn't let the team leader get hurt right before the test. Suddenly, someone screamed at the top of their lungs for them to stop. The guy with the sword jumped in to attack the masked man, but the masked man was able to block the attack with ease. The masked man jumped, kicking out with incredible force. The masked man realized that he had increased the distance between them right before the attack hit, and he knew he was dealing with an expert. The masked man's eyes narrowed as he stared intently. The masked man stood tall, while Yeowon fell to the ground, defeated. The masked man looked up at the moon, deciding he should give up chasing after him. The man cursed, realizing he had been defeated. He asked if the other man was okay. The man angrily refused to accept help from someone like him, saying he'd rather be left behind. The scene shifted to the Mado house quarters. Men inside looked shocked. They saw a man carrying another man, and they exclaimed in surprise, recognizing the prince. The men were worried and asked what happened and if the prince was alright, but the prince told them to treat the injured men first. Another man asked if the master was hurt, but Cheonmu Jiam said he was fine and not to worry. The nanomachine scanned Cheonmu Jiam's injury, identifying a 4 cm stab wound that was only 2 mm deep. Cheon Yeowon realized that the injury wasn't that bad. One of the men noticed that Cheonmu Jiam was bleeding. As a result, Cheon Yeowon looked furious, knowing who was responsible for the prince's injury. The man was bleeding and pale, barely able to speak. Huban yelled for someone to call the leader right away. Someone quickly started to bandage the wound. Men asked the leader how he was doing, explaining that they had done what they could with the available supplies. Cheon Mukiam looked at the injured man with concern, wondering what was wrong. The injured man was told that he wouldn't be able to walk normally for a while. The injured man was in a lot of pain. The other men started to panic, realizing they were screwed now that their leader couldn't walk. Suddenly, blue energy shot into the injured man's head, starting to heal him. Someone told the injured man to sleep for a bit, promising to take him to the infirmary, and that there was one more injured person that needed help. One of the guys offered to carry the injured man, but Yeowon said he would go himself. Someone shouted for the leader. Another guy ran up, carrying someone else who was hurt, saying that Cadet 80 had also hurt his head, though not as bad as Cadet 4. The leader said he knew, and that he figured someone would bring the injured guy over somehow. Someone replied, saying so he wasn't dumb, and that he left the guy so someone would follow him. The leader asked what the reason was, explaining that it wasn't much, but that only their team had the vibe that this setback would make them fail the test, and that it was a surprise to see that this one was hurt. The guy carrying the injured man said that was all he wanted to say, and demanded they give him the injured man. The man told him he should go back now, because he already knew he couldn't walk around at night. He understood. He told him that if he didn't have teeth, he needed to learn to use his gums. The man looked confused, wondering what the heck he just said. The guy turned around and walked away, leaving leaves falling behind him. The voice wondered if something like this had happened to other teams too. The voice thought it was just a loophole in the testing method, but now he realized there was a hidden purpose behind the second test. Yahello looked serious as he considered the implications. The ants surrounded the injured ant. The voice said that aiming for the team leader meant they were trying to make it easier to beat that team in the test tomorrow. Yahello suddenly realized something. He understood that the reason they were split into groups that would fight each other was all part of the plan. Yahello grinned, knowing they made this situation happen on purpose. Yahello realized that this was the heavenly demon god sect, so they wanted them to act like demons without being held back by rules. Someone in Team 8 thought that if this was all they were capable of, it was over for them. Someone suddenly spoke up, asking how long they were gonna act pitiful just because their team leader got hurt. Another guy, looking angry, asked who he was calling pitiful. The first man argued that sitting around complaining without even thinking about choosing a new leader or making a plan was definitely pitiful. Someone else chimed in, saying that only Prince Cheonmu GM had leadership training and could take command. The first guy looked at them with a surprised expression, asking why they thought like that. Down below, someone smirked. Suddenly, one of the guys shouted that they had their master right there, Prince Cheonmu. The crowd in the room was shocked by this sudden announcement. As a result, all they could say was, "7th Prince?" The others looked just as confused. Someone raised his hand. Cadet 38 agreed with the decision. He figured that since Yahello didn't back down from a fight with Cheonmu GM. Suddenly, the others agreed to the decision, wondering what they should do next. One of them said that since Prince Cheonmu GM wasn't around, they should just agree for now, because passing the second test was more important. The man then asked if everyone agreed with him becoming the team leader. He grinned, satisfied with the outcome. He then mentioned something he had thought about during their formation training. It was midnight. Back at teammates' quarters, one of the guys was sleeping like a log. But then, someone started walking around. Suddenly, Yahello activated his night vision mode. The nanomachine confirmed that it was activating night vision in his field of view. The hallway shimmered under the green glow of night vision. Yahello sighed. He jumped from the roof. Yahello landed silently, using his hand to brace himself. He thought about how many times he had come to Team 7's quarters tonight. Yahello asked Nano if anyone was still awake at this hour. Nano started scanning room 7 to see who was awake, labeling everyone as asleep. Nano confirmed that all 20 people inside room 7 were sound asleep, which meant they were finally all sleeping. Satisfied, our hero jumped down from the window. He then asked Nano if the person who attacked Cheonmu GM was in there, but after scanning everyone and comparing their body size to the attacker, Nano found no match. Suddenly, the hand started glowing with strange energy, and the man speaking said it didn't matter. And immediately, the guy was being electrocuted. He looked up, wondering if this guy was Team 7's leader. Turns out, it was Yahello, who asked what the man was. The man could only look at him in shock and disbelief. The masked man looked at the guy on the ground, thinking that he woke up because he was there. He figured the man was perceptive, as expected of Team 7's leader. The masked man was confident that there was no way the guy would recognize someone wearing a mask in the dark. He figured the guy would have trouble walking around properly for a while since he'd used a needle to poke his muscles. The masked man stared, saying it wasn't the guy's fault, but he shouldn't resent him. The masked man wondered if he should move over to the next room since he was done with Team 7. Turns out, the leader of Team 5 is Cheonmu. The masked person thought that the attacker wasn't a girl. Plus, Cheonmu couldn't beat Cheonmu GM in martial arts anyway. That meant the person who attacked Cheonmu GM was in Team 6. He saw that all 16 people in Team 6's quarters were sound asleep. The masked person realized there were supposed to be 20 people in Team 6. Even if they counted the 3 female cadets, someone was still missing. The masked person asked the nanomachine to find if anyone matched the attacker, but there was no match. So, the one who wasn't around was likely the culprit. The masked person wondered if the attacker had been on the first floor, they would have found him moving around earlier. He was now trying to figure out what to do, but then he paused, thinking about his strategy. He realized there was no rule that said he could only aim for the team leader. It was going to be an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. The guy with red hair figured that if the person was leading Team 8, it meant the Spring Clan kid got hurt by someone. Yahello thought they had perfectly understood what the test meant, and this time the participants weren't disappointing. Yahello then asked if they had all drawn. Since they had all prepared fairly for the test, he hoped they'd show good victories. The students looked at each other, wondering if it was really going to be fair. The guys from Team 8 walked down the stairs. Then, on the ground, the students were getting ready. Yeo-woon stared at one of the guys and thought the eyes looked familiar. Yeo-woon immediately ordered the nano to the guy. The system started scanning the guy's body. They came back, saying it was a 100% match based on height and body shape. The guy smirked after that. The second test round was about to begin. Team 1 versus Team 3, with the winning team being the one that suppressed the other. Lee Ham yelled for the match to begin. At the same time, the fighters charged at each other, screaming. Cheon Mu-yeon, Team 1 leader from the Dark Clan, shouted that they were starting from the right. Someone noticed their diagonal formation and wondered about it. The panel showed diagrams of a normal formation versus the diagonal one. The two teams clashed, swords meeting shields in a brutal fight. The group advanced, pushing forward with their shields. And immediately, a massive explosion of energy erupted. The soldiers were getting pushed back, struggling to hold their ground. They screamed for their teammates to resist. One soldier managed to stab another. As a result, battle marks spilled from the soldier's mouth. Another soldier yelled, trying to get his teammates to come to their senses and get back in the fight. The soldier coughed up battle marks, clearly in pain. He fell to his knees, unable to stand anymore. The flags waved, symbolizing that it was their loss. The enemy stood over him, telling him to surrender. The soldier finally admitted that he lost. Lee Hamming thought the fight was pretty boring, since the other team wasn't that strong. The announcer congratulated Team 1 for winning and passing the second test. Then, it was announced that Team 4 had also won against Team 2, and the next teams were called forward to compete. It was finally Yeo-woon's team's turn to fight, but the enthusiasm of his teammates had dropped, which wasn't good. Yeo-woon noticed that his teammates looked nervous, so he asked if they were. He knew they were anxious because the team leader had changed, and he admitted he was nervous too. Yeo-woon explained that if they didn't win, they'd be kicked out of the academy, and it was too early for that. He was also angry and didn't want to lose to the scumbag who tried to make them face problems by attacking their team leader like a coward. Yeo-woon told them that if they all felt the same way he did, they couldn't afford to lose. The team raised their swords, ready to win. Lee Hammond watched them, thinking that encouragement alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. The guy thought they'd soon find out if Yeo-woon was a panther or just a stray cat. The signal was given. The team that overpowers the opponent wins and the fight could begin. Cheon Won-ryo, the leader of Team 5, clicked her tongue, wishing she was up against Cheon Mu-jeom's team instead. The other guy told Yeo-woon that he didn't belong there, and that leaving the academy would be better for his pitiful life. Suddenly, Lee Hammond yelled for everyone to attack. Yeo-woon activated his nanomachines to use augmented reality and start the strategy tutorial. The system activated augmented reality in his vision and started the battle tutorial. Yeo-woon shouted for someone to wait. He was talking to number 2. The system showed that the opponents were changing to an arrow formation and told Yeo-woon to change to a wedge formation. The guy with the shield said that they could only try to fight with them there. Someone shouted that it was number 6. He wondered about the wedge formation. Lee Hammond wondered how he could make such a stupid decision right from the start, and thought that the wedge formation was useless if the leading team leader was weak. He asked himself if he had expected too much from him. Lee Hammond attacked, yelling if Yeo-woon dared to fight against the true heir. The attack exploded with crazy force. Lee Hammond looked shocked and wondered what was going on. Lee Hammond couldn't believe that Yeo-woon had stopped his 10 stars defensive skill. Yeo-woon knew that his inner power was still lacking compared to Cheon Won-ryo, but if he considered his outer power, which was enhanced up to the teacher's level, he had the upper hand. Yeo-woon was having a blast. Lee Hammond realized he was being pushed back and that if he didn't change the formation, the weaker guys at the back would make the formation fall apart. He wondered what the heck the boy had done. Crap! The formation was getting destroyed. Lee Hammond yelled at his team to back off and switch to formation number 1. The enemy had changed to a standard formation, so the guy ordered his team to change their formation to number 3. The enemy warriors were ready to fight. At the same time, one of them smirked, wondering about their formation. The guy wondered if they thought using a method already used by Team 1's leader would work on him. The warrior with the shield said that Cheon Yeo-woon's Nigong was impressive, but his tactics were terrible. Lee Hammond ordered his team to switch to formation number 6. Lee Hammond thought that their Nigong skills were about the same, so he could break through the middle of their line formation with a wedge formation. Cheon Yeo-woon charged forward, ready to attack. Lee Hammond grinned, thinking that the moment Cheon Yeo-woon was separated from his team, he would end him. But Cheon Yeo-woon just smirked back, as if he knew what was coming. Lee Hammond looked nervous, but Cheon Yeo-woon looked calm and ready. Lee Hammond's team was shocked and stammered, wondering what was happening. Turns out, Cheon Yeo-woon's team had split into 2 groups. The soldiers realized that they were being attacked from both sides in a pincer movement. Lee Hammond screamed at his team not to panic and to change to formation number 2. Lee Hammond realized that they were facing an arrow formation and ordered his team to concentrate on the front. But the soldiers were already getting attacked from behind, and they screamed for help. Li Hamming was furious, wondering how those peasants were able to do this. Soldiers were running as fast as they could. At the same time, the soldiers were struggling to hold their ground, while Li Hamming looked absolutely furious. The soldiers realized they were completely surrounded. Li Hamming realized that the numbers they were given were a trick. The plan was to use the same training formation numbers against them. Yeo Woon thought that he would confuse the enemy team by switching up the original formation numbers. Li Hamming was furious that this scumbag dared to play with him. Someone shouted, asking if it was Cheon Won Ryo. Immediately after, the order was given to crush them. The soldiers started to look worried. The enemy soldiers pushed forward with their shields, and the men started to panic. The shields were dropped on the ground. Li Hamming yelled, asking what they were doing and who told them to drop their shields. The soldiers were silent, looking down in shame. Li Hamming screamed, realizing what was about to happen. He was scared that everyone would laugh at him. Li Hamming looked up, screaming Cheon Yeo Woon's name in terror. Li Hamming screamed, calling him a piece of trash. The soldiers tried to defend themselves, but they were too slow. Li Hamming used his fiery slice of the ignited sword technique. Cheon Yeo Woon didn't even flinch and countered with his own sword. Cheon Yeo Woon's attack landed, and battle marks splattered everywhere. The sword cut deep, and battle marks splattered everywhere. Cheon Yeo Woon moved so fast that his sword left trails of light. The young master's eyes were locked on his target. Our hero's sword cut through the soldiers like they were nothing. The soldiers around him were scared stiff, watching their friends get cut down. At the same time, Li Hamming looked on in total shock. The young master didn't slow down, and his sword kept cutting through the soldiers. Our hero stood over the bodies of the fallen soldiers. One of the soldiers gasped. She realized what was happening. The woman screamed about her arm being gone. The woman screamed, realizing her arm had been cut off, and told her teammates to stop the bleeding. Cheon Yeo Woon's face was covered in battle marks, but he stayed calm, realizing that the sword wasn't strong enough. Li Hamming thought he had stopped Cheon Yeo Woon's sword, but he realized the last move was incomplete, and he yelled in pain. Cheon Yeo Woon looked down at his opponent, and said he was going to kill him, realizing the training sword had its limits. It was announced that Team 8, led by Cadet 7, had won and passed the second test. The crowd went wild, cheering for Cheon Yeo Woon. Li Hamming was surprised that Cheon Yeo Woon used the 7 butterfly connections. He knew that the young master was still lacking in Nigong, but his movements were nearly on the same level as Xiao Meng. He wondered what the drunkard had done to him. Li Hamming knew that it wasn't just because of Xiao Meng's teaching. Cheon Yeo Woon had grown overwhelmingly in all aspects within 21 days. Below, the group of people were in formation. He was amazed by the young master's tactics and strategies, as well as being daring enough to cut off Cheon Won Ryo's arm. He thought he was a genius. Li Hamming wondered if he should have taken Cheon Yeo Woon in as his disciple before Xiao Meng did, but realized that wouldn't work since he was the owner of the academy. Turns out, Cheon Yeo Woon wasn't gonna be happy about all this. The guy with the shield realized that the young master had beaten the Sound clan and was hiding his martial arts. He needed to remember him since he had basically showed everyone what he was truly capable of. The announcer called for the third competition group to come forward. The group marched forward, ready for the fight. One of the fighters realized that he thought he had avoided something properly. One of the fighters realized that he hadn't even considered the fact that the crazy guy who messed up his team and used the time when he wasn't around to cripple everyone's legs was Cheon Yeo Woon. Our hero smirked, knowing he had done a good job tricking everyone the whole time. Meanwhile, one of the members of Team 7 was saying that everyone except the team leader was limping. He thought they should be able to beat them easily if they attacked boldly. He didn't know who did it, but he was thankful. The order was given, and the group charged forward in the 6th formation, but one of the warriors realized that they couldn't do anything because their legs were injured. Yeo Woon grinned, telling the trash that they should be thankful for the rest of their lives. The group tried to switch to an arrow formation, but one of the warriors laughed, asking what good a formation was when everyone was limping. Yeo Woon moved with incredible speed, his sword ready to strike. At the same time, the warrior screamed as he raised his shield, trying to defend himself from the attack. But Yeo Woon's sword cut right through the shield like it was nothing. The warrior screamed, realizing his shield was useless. Yeo Woon didn't hesitate, and brought his sword down on the warrior. The warrior coughed up battle marks, his eyes wide with shock as he realized what had just happened. He screamed as he was pushed back, the force of the blow almost unbearable. The warrior was sent flying back from the sheer power of the attack. He stammered in shock, unable to believe what was happening to them. Another warrior screamed that they were being pushed back, fear in his voice. Another warrior screamed as the sword pierced right through his neck, killing him instantly. The warriors were ordered to suppress them all and not let anyone stand back up. Li Hamming watched the scene unfold, muttering in disbelief. Yeo Woon continued his assault, striking another warrior. Yeo Woon stood tall among the fallen, his presence overwhelming. Yeo Woon, covered in battle marks, warned that someone was next. Suddenly, A warrior shouted Cheon Yeo-woon's name. Yeo-woon smirked, realizing he made an annoying enemy. The announcement rang out. Team 7 had won the third round. Back at the Motto House's main hall, back at the academy owner's office, a group of men sat around a table. Lee Hamung announced that he had the list of everyone who failed, including their grades up to Team 5. Another man noted that a lot of people failed this time and asked if Lee Hamung was talking about the higher clans. Lee Hamung explained that those without clans just wanted to be guards, so it didn't matter, but the higher clans' heirs might feel wronged since they would have made it to the third round if it wasn't for the group test. The man replied that something like this wouldn't have happened if they had used the same rules as the old demonic academy guide, but there was nothing they could do about it. One of the men at the table argued that if they didn't reassign the failed participants positions and duties based on their performance, the higher clans would protest. Lee Hamung chimed in, saying that the higher clans' heirs would grow well with their own martial arts, but it was unfortunate that the middle and lower clans lost their chance at getting the medicine ball and entering the precious library. Lee Hamung added that the ones who passed the second test had to be gathered at the precious library. The Motto House precious library stood tall and imposing. A group of people made their way towards the library, ready to see what awaited them. Yeo-woon was impressed by the precious library, thinking it looked even bigger than the main hall. He realized the other students had already been to the first floor while he was recovering, so he wondered if today they'd be going to the second floor. Suddenly, a man told him he needed to put all his effort into mastering the butterfly sword and the spring dance breathing method. That was the only way he passed the test. The man clarified that he was talking about the precious library. He thought it was useless. The man added that Yeo-woon was already learning martial arts from the 4th and 5th floors, so he shouldn't be sad about missing the first floor. The man boasted that there was nothing that could even compare to his martial arts there. But Yeo-woon thought to himself that he had the nano. He was gonna as much as he could from both the first and second floors. He lit a candle to see better. Yeo-woon was on the first floor of the precious library, and it was the first time he'd ever seen so many books. He figured he was the only one there. Yeo-woon knew he only had 2 hours on the first floor, so he needed to hurry. He told the nano to as he quickly looked through the precious books. Turns out, he was scanning 5 arts of blade mastery. The was starting. The was complete. The was complete. Yeo-woon asked the nano how much time he had left. The nano told him he had 1 hour left, and he had scanned 55 books including sword mastery and breathing techniques. He told the nano not to send those to his brain yet, since he had only looked at the outer border books. Yeo-woon wondered if he should check the inner shelves too. Yeo-woon then looked at a giant rock in the room. The warrior wondered if the young master was an expert, and if he was the one who protected the first floor of the library. Yeo-woon wondered why there was a gravestone in the middle of the library. The warrior stared intently. The warrior's shirt had a strange symbol on it. The warrior explained that the gravestone was left by the main academy's founder, the heavenly demon ancestor. Yeo-woon was surprised to hear about the heavenly demon ancestor. The warrior explained that the words were carved into sapphire. It looked like there was a poem written on it. He wondered what it meant. Yeo-woon was shocked. He realized that the writing was carved with a finger. The warrior thought it was amazing that the ancestor focused his energy into his finger to write on the sapphire, something that's hard to scratch, even with a sword and large amounts of energy. The warrior explained that people usually try to read the books and don't pay attention to the carving, but Yeo-woon found the ancestor's trace because he's his bloodline. He admitted that he almost missed it too. Yeo-woon said that was to be expected. The warrior continued, saying that no one would pay attention to a gravestone with a poem when there are so many books around. He's been protecting this place for over 20 years, but no one has ever noticed it. He added that includes the descendant of the heavenly family. The warrior apologized for taking up so much of Yeo-woon's time and told him to keep doing what he was doing, saying he understood. Yeo-woon suddenly noticed something strange. He wondered what it could be. Turns out, there were marks from sharp objects on the back of the gravestone, like someone was hiding something. Yeo-woon ordered Nano to analyze the traces. Nano started analyzing the surface of the gravestone, and the analysis was quickly completed. According to the analysis, the traces were left by the sharp blade of a sword. Yeo-woon wondered why there would be sword marks there. Yeo-woon was shocked that someone would do this to the heavenly demon ancestor's gravestone. According to Nano's analysis, it looked like 2 people made those marks. He couldn't believe it. Yeo-woon looked closely at the marks on the gravestone, but he couldn't tell anything just by looking. So, Yeo-woon ordered Nano to show him the sword traces in 3D. He instantly noticed a huge difference in the strength and angle of each sword. It was easy to miss that 2 different people made these marks. Yeo-woon wondered if someone tried to hide the original scarring by making even more messy scars on top of it. Maybe. Yeo-woon asked Nano if it could tell the difference between the 2 people's sword traces, and then ordered it to get rid of the sword traces except for the ones that were there first. Nano got to work, analyzing the sword traces. Yeo-woon was shocked by what he was seeing. Yeo-woon realized that these weren't just normal sword traces. It was actually a complex sword movement. He stared at the sword traces, realizing it was made up of untold formations. Yahello frowned, realizing he couldn't tell what kind of movement it was just from looking at it. He was still lacking in understanding. Yahello asked Nano if it could analyze these sword traces and simulate it as an augmented video. Nano confirmed that it was possible. But before that, Nano needed to know the hardness of the sapphire to analyze the person's strength. Yahello wondered how he was supposed to figure that out, thinking to himself that there was no way Nano was telling him to break it. The supervisor walked up to Yahello, surprised. He asked if Yahello wasn't supposed to be reading books. The supervisor pointed out that Yahello had also seen the back of the stone. He commented that it was quite a mess, right? The supervisor said it was unfortunate. He explained that there used to be rumors that the heavenly demon ancestor left a sword technique of his epiphany there. Yahello repeated the phrase, "The heavenly demon ancestor's epiphany?" The supervisor frowned, wondering who would damage the back of the gravestone. He clicked his tongue, clearly annoyed. The supervisor suggested that maybe they did it so that only they could use the ancestor's epiphany. Yahello wondered if the marks were just random damage. He thought to himself, asking if these traces were really just vandalism. The supervisor told Yahello that he was leaving to make rounds. He added that Yahello should look around before he left. Yahello thought to himself that, fortunately, the supervisor was leaving. Nano explained that the hardness of the sapphire could be measured by placing a hand on the surface. Yahello acknowledged, realizing he could do that now. He placed his hand on the gravestone to measure the hardness of the sapphire. Yahello touched the surface, activating Nano's analysis. He groaned, annoyed that it was loading. Nano announced that the investigation into the stone's hardness was complete. With diamond at a hardness of 10, the sapphire was a 7. Yahello was impressed, saying it was really hard. Yahello stared at the gravestone, wondering who could have ruined the original sword traces with their own. Using the analysis of the stone's hardness, the sword traces were now being simulated as an augmented video. The augmented video simulation was starting. Yahello started to ask who did this, but Nano cut him off, saying that conversation was not supported. The sword trace simulation was starting. The augmented video simulation showed the first sword movement. A golden figure swung a sword with incredible speed. The golden figure moved with impossible speed. The sword flashed, leaving trails of light. Yahello was stunned by the complexity of the sword movements. The simulation continued to play out as Yahello watched, completely absorbed. Yahello was determined to understand every single movement. Yahello called out to Nano in shock. Yahello asked if this was one movement. Nano responded that the analysis showed all the formations connected. According to his martial arts knowledge, it was one movement. Yahello's eyes widened. There was no way. He thought back to the butterfly sword technique, which was made up of 8 formations. Even that had taken him half a year to master. But this couldn't even be compared to that. He realized that it was impossible to annul this technique. Yahello couldn't believe his luck. He hadn't expected anything from the first floor of the library, but he had stumbled upon a real opportunity. He told Nano to save the movement so he could transfer it later. Nano confirmed that he understood. Yahello realized he could have easily missed this treasure because of the messy sword traces. He figured that whoever left these marks must be quite evil. But then, he thought that maybe he should be thankful. After all, only he had earned this movement. Nano began to explain the analysis of the sword traces after removing the mess. Movements that were interconnected had been found. Nano explained that 45 movements had been carved according to time. Yahello was shocked. They weren't sword traces to cover the technique, but were all sword movements instead. Yahello thought about it for a second. Maybe. He ordered Nano to simulate the sword movements in order as an augmented video. Nano confirmed. Nano showed the first sword movement. The simulation continued, displaying the second, third, and 10th movements. The 20th and 30th movements flashed before his eyes. Yahello watched as the movements were becoming more and more perfect. Nano announced that the augmented video simulation had finished. Yahello looked a little surprised as the augmented video simulation finished. He snapped back to reality. Yahello asked Nano if it could make the initially saved sword movement and the 45th sword movement fight against each other through augmented video. Nano confirmed that it was possible. A wide grin spread across Yahello's face. Nano activated battle mode in augmented video. The two figures clashed, their movements a blur of light and energy. Yahello's eyes widened in disbelief. The green figure struck the final blow, sending the gold figure crashing to the ground. Yahello looked completely stunned. It got annulled. Yeowoon realized that the first movement he thought was perfect, with just a difference of one formation. This wasn't just trying to get rid of the movements from before. The 45 sword traces were the record of the long process of trying to annul the original movement. Yeowoon asked the supervisor if the first floor was the only floor with a sapphire gravestone. The supervisor replied that he had only worked on the first floor, so he didn't know exactly. But he had heard that there was one on every floor. Yeowoon smiled. He told Nano to get ready because they were going to the second floor. They had arrived at the Motto House Precious Library's second floor. Yeowoon noticed that the others weren't finished yet. He figured it was because the first floor's reading time was 2 hours and the second floor's was 3 hours. Suddenly, Yeowoon recognized someone in the library. That guy was the Blade Clan's Cheon Yu-chan. The other clan heirs didn't even come here because they were overconfident about their own clan's martial arts. Yeowoon thought to himself that Cheon Yu-chan must be a careful guy, seeing as how he was even studying the low-level martial arts. He should be more careful of him compared to the others. The library was full of students quietly reading. Yeowoon stood in front of a gravestone. It was here. He wondered what was on the back. Yeowoon smirked. As he thought, the gravestone's surface was completely scratched up with sword traces. Yeowoon told Nano to analyze these like it did on the first floor. Nano confirmed. Nano found the same sword traces from the first floor. The first sword trace was a sword movement, made up of 24 formations. The sword traces left by the other person were 56 sword movements. Yeowoon reacted. 56. Yeowoon realized that they must have done more research to annul the first movement that was carved here as compared to the first floor. Yeowoon wanted to check it right away, but it would be hard since there were a lot of eyes here. He told Nano to extract only the sword movements and save them. Nano confirmed. Yeowoon thought to himself that he had earned 4 incomparable movements. He was looking forward to when he could transfer it to his brain and body. Yeowoon told Nano to start the scan. Someone slammed their book on the table in frustration. The students continued to pore over their books, trying to decipher the ancient texts. Cheon Yu-chan muttered about what that bastard was doing. He couldn't believe it. Cheon Yu-chan complained that it was hard to learn anything even if you read the words one by one. But that guy was just flicking through everything. Cheon Yu-chan told himself that he needed to focus. There was no time to pay attention to that bastard. They only had an hour left. Yeowoon looked satisfied as he held the book. Nano announced that the scan had been completed. Hey, real quick, my mom said this video would get 0 subscribers. If you enjoyed the story so far, click subscribe to watch the next part.